Chapter 210. Fairchild's snow-white robes fluttered, and the mercury-like radiance suddenly undulated. The gray layer that had just formed was torn apart. Baze's feet left the ground from the powerful assault, and he flew backward involuntarily. Mirror of truth. Through Cat Eye's shared perspective, a group of society members who had the time to watch practically spammed the screen with this word. Fairchild practically did not exert any strength in that instant. Instead, he used the Shield of Truth's outstanding technique to forcefully rebound Baze's attack back, allowing Baze to absorb it all. One only needed to look at the momentum of Baze's raging dark flames to know just how inconceivable it was to achieve this near-total reflection. This was Fairchild's most classic method of judgment. Though he had never determined the name of this move, he had long since given it a proper name in the circle of ability users. It had an illustrious reputation. Luonan could see it even more clearly. It was not a simple matter of the material plane, nor was it an effect of physics. It was a structural power formed by the mutual interference of the mental and material planes. He could even capture the entire process of the intense ripples that blossomed on the mental and material planes separating and merging. In the end, they converged on the material plane to form an enormous impact force. However, Baze's mental plane remained stable. He even took the initiative to change the flow of energy. The impact force on the material plane became stronger, but it also eliminated the damage to the mental plane, maintaining the stability of the domain of words of Krite. From this perspective, Baze was not actually at a disadvantage. The power of the two had always been cutting back and forth between the mental and material planes. The most difficult part of this method lay in realizing the transformation technique of mutual interference. Whether it was Fairchild or Baze, they both achieved this through the structure of the interference of body and soul. Their inhumanly strong physiques and firm willpower were precisely the foundation to realize this transformation. It would be very difficult for Luonan to realize a similar transformation mode in his lifetime. However, Luonan being able to pry into the marvels of this was an inconceivable matter in and of itself. No one had expressed their views on this deep mechanism in the encrypted channel. Cat Eyes, who was beside him, could not even approach the battlefield with her mental senses. Otherwise, she would most likely suffer a backlash. As for Luonan, he was able to do all this easily because of his previous exchange with Fairchild. His thoughts were clear in the domain of the mutual interference of the mental and material planes. But on the other hand, he also vaguely sensed that his family's spiritual senses seemed to be somewhat different from others. He used formatting theory to cultivate his soul strength. In terms of the depth of his clairvoyance, Cat Eyes, Mr. White, and other ability users who specialized in perception and the study of the soul had a faint advantage over him. At the very least, his clairvoyance method had never been successfully tracked by anyone. Ever since he understood the mysteries of soul breathing, he was able to switch between the shallow and deep layers of the mental plane at any time, making it even more difficult for the observed to fathom. In this way, Luonan's special clairvoyance was able to penetrate and analyze a large amount of deep information from what ordinary people saw as ordinary phenomena. This information was then fed back to the configuration of his soul, converging into a unique experience. This experience became the most crucial element for the constant growth of his soul strength. Child once said that nothing was more important than observation. At the very least, this was the truth for enhancers. Luonan personally experienced the advantages of this most critical ability. Speaking of which, he had always treated this as a burden in the past. Fairchild blasted Baze away and strode out the door. The mercury-like glow on his body was the special characteristic of his body and soul interfering structure and operating energy. There were many special structural details that would only truly manifest in battle, and Luonan was fascinated by them. Because of this, Luonan's reaction was especially sharp when this structure was attacked. Fairchild had only walked 3 to 5 steps when he suddenly felt an omen of alarm. He shouted, "Careful." This warning was not aimed at Fairchild. Fairchild knew very well where Fairchild's weaknesses were. Fairchild hoped to endlessly accumulate an advantage on the mental plane to destroy the structural transformation of Fairchild's Shield of Truth. However, Fairchild did not give Fairchild the chance. The area he controlled was as stable as a boulder. On the mental plane, only a little bit emerged from the water's surface. No matter how turbid waves surged, it remained majestically motionless. However, the words of Krite seemed to possess a technique that could extract power from the pain of the surrounding living beings. Could rapidly transform. When the words of Krite was fully activated, every living being in the surroundings could be considered its fulcrum. Luonan's warning was half a beat too late. The words of Krite hissed loudly just as Fairchild's voice fell. The distorted darkness in the room did not ease because of Fairchild's departure. Instead it grew heavier. On the mental plane, the words of Krite rapidly spread and permeated, covering a large area. Cat Eyes let out a muffled groan. She released her mental senses out of habit. It was as if she had been bitten by a venomous snake. Her 5 senses and 6 senses all received an attack. The instant of pain was like pressing her head into a pool of venom. The pain made her body go limp. Yuan directly assigned personnel in the encrypted channel. White salt. Got it. I'll be right there. Bai Xinyan responded. Then she went silent. That person's strength should be above average, but Fairchild could not count on her for the time being. Fortunately, the chains deep within Cat Eyes' body and soul rang out at this time. The attack was greatly neutralized and the pain lessened. Cat Eyes could not help grinding her teeth again. She shot Luonan an ice-cold glance. In the end, she extended her hand and pulled Luonan away. This way. No matter what, they did not dare to go to the main entrance. Fortunately, the 2 firing points from before had pierced through the soundproof wall, giving them room to choose. Luonan still wanted to watch the fight between Fairchild and Baze, but he knew that risking his life to do something like this was truly insensible. He glanced outside the door, but Fairchild's figure was already nowhere to be seen. The problem was Luonan saw Shui Weiluan. Shui Weiluan had rushed to the main entrance. He grabbed the legs of a few unconscious special police officers and dragged them inside. Uncle Shui, you guys go first. Shui Weiluan could not abandon his subordinates and escape by himself no matter what. However, 7 special police officers had just been knocked out by Fairchild. Even though Shui Weiluan had a body of godly strength with the aid of the exoskeleton armor, there was always a limit to what he could carry. It was impossible for him to pile up 7 living people and drag them all in one go. More importantly, Shui Weiluan did not understand the mysteries of this fight. The influence of the words of Krite was constantly probing down from the mental plane. Cat Eyes had already suffered a loss and it would soon affect ordinary people. Shui Weiluan's willpower was extremely strong among ordinary people, but there was still a large gap between him and an ability user. When the time came, he would suffer the same fate as his subordinates, perhaps even more miserable. Cat Eyes hissed and pressed down on her sore scalp. She was helpless against this situation. If this officer Shui had not used Zhang Yingying's channel to communicate with his son, she would have turned around and left without any pressure. However, after that experience, it would be unjustifiable for him to pretend that he didn't know anything. There are a total of 7 people. They need to run at least 2 rounds. Cat Eyes quickly came to a conclusion. She ordered Luonan, you climb over first. Connect with White Salt. She turned around to help as she spoke, but Luonan pulled her back. Wait. Luonan's body suffused with a weak light the moment he spoke. For the fastest and most accurate novel reading, please visit Chapter 211. Cat Eyes' pupils constricted. She was able to sense that Luonan was utilizing his soul strength. However, this magnitude was clearly beyond her scope. Before joining this operation, Yuan had emphasized to her that Luonan was currently undergoing treatment due to the serious imbalance between his body and soul. He couldn't utilize his abilities too much, or else his soul strength would cause serious damage to his nervous system. Luonan had already courted death once before. But back then, Luonan had been communicating with a crazy believer, causing people to overlook the risks involved. But this time, with the precision of Cat Eye's senses, she was able to sense that there were clearly some minute distortions and deformations in many areas of Luonan's nervous system. But what the hell was this light? If Cat Eye saw it, then it meant that everyone else had seen it. Bai Xinyan, who was rushing over, let out a long sigh. With such a willful patient, we doctors are quite troubled. Yuan's stern and severe voice cut in. Mr. Luo, please don't overuse your ability to avoid unexpected consequences. These words were quite serious. Cat Eyes received their warning and grabbed Luonan's shoulder, wanting to stop him. However, in the depths of his body and soul, the chains rattled. His entire body, from the inside to the outside, was trembling slightly, as if he had been electrocuted. His hands stiffened halfway and in the end he couldn't move at all. It was finally here. Cat Eye's heart throbbed. Soon after, her heart was filled with irritation. This was the problem she was most worried about after the operation at Limestone Water Village pub last week. Back then she had collided with Luonan's drawing of the psychic diagram and suffered a backlash. Then she inexplicably fell into Luonan's trap. Her body and soul were pierced by an invisible chain, and she seemed to be imprisoned by some sort of method. But in the following week, Luonan didn't make any strange movements. Even the existence of the chains gradually became undetectable. It just made her nervous and on edge. And in tonight's operation, she and Luonan were within arm's reach. Luonan didn't make any excessive movements. Instead, he used the chains to help her get through several difficulties. Just when Cat Eyes nearly believed that she had misunderstood Luonan, the essence of Luonan's methods was exposed at this critical moment. Right now, she was just like a cat and dog with a chain on it. Its master didn't allow it to move, so it was strangled by the neck and tossed around with all its might. Cat Eyes glared at him with a murderous gaze. It was not an exaggeration at all. She wanted to pounce on Luonan in the next moment and bite his throat. As for using soul force, who cares? Just at this moment, Xuanhuan's surprised voice rang out. Thanks to Cat Eye's long-range perception ability, she did not need to turn her head to see that each of the 7 special police officers had a set of diagrams materializing on their bodies. It was about the size of a fist. Judging from its shape, it was a tetrahedron with inscribed and circumscribed spheres. Right, it was Luonan's avatar that appeared in the encrypted channel. Cat Eyes was slightly startled. The raging flames in her heart paused for a moment. With just one look, one could tell that this phenomenon was caused by the interference of the spiritual plane with the material plane. According to the theory of the soul, the effectiveness of mutual interference in the mental and material planes was directly proportional to the order. In other words, the more orderly the external representation was, the more effective the soul power would be on the material plane, and the more effective its control would be. Especially when Luonan was doing 7 things at once. He presented 7 sets of diagrams at the same time. Even if each set of diagrams was the same, even if it was just for show. Before she could finish her thought, Cat Eyes sensed the bodies of the unconscious special police officers tremble. It was clear that they were showing signs of regaining consciousness. Cat Eyes finally could not hold back from turning her head. She stared with wide eyes. Xuanhuan was pleasantly surprised. He finally realized the source of the change in the situation. He turned his head to look. Luonan took a deep breath. He did not make any obvious movements, but the 7 sets of diagrams fluctuated at the same time. Fine vibrations were produced on the mental and material planes. A low buzzing sound seemed to ring in Cat Eye's ears. In that instant, the words of Krite, which had been hissing in their ears all this time, became a bit fuzzy. They never recovered. Immediately, a special police officer let out an "ah," and instinctively sat up. Since there was one, there were 2 more. The special police officers on the ground sat up one by one and turned over. Although they were still confused, the miraculous aspect of this method of awakening their intelligence left Cat Eyes and Xuanhuan dumbfounded. It wasn't just the 2 present. Zhang Yingying sent a single "ah" in the encrypted channel. She felt that it was impossible to describe her current mood. She simply tossed out a string of dumbfounded emojis and frantically spammed the screen. Ah! Did someone pass on strength to him this week? Or did a certain secretary dual cultivate with him? This rate of progress is illogical. This technique. Before she could finish spamming the last message, she was silently muted by a certain secretary. However, Zhang Yingying's meaning was what the vast majority of people were thinking. Xuanhuan was a bit better. In any case, he could use his expert abilities to explain things that he did not understand. However, the most painful part for the professionals of the society was that they could not understand things so simply. It must be known that it was always easier to destroy than to build. To instantly knock a conscious person into a comatose state and to instantly wake a comatose person, one was positive while the other was negative. To go from disorder to order, to go from high entropy to low entropy. The difficulty was incomparable. How in the world did Luonan do it? Red Fox and Bamboo Pole had just run to the rendezvous point to rendezvous with Papercut. He was still gasping for breath and nearly choked to death by Luonan's move. He coughed twice before guessing. Child was the one who overturned this group of special police officers, and then Child taught him a rescue technique? How free could Child be? The truly idle Papercut had been sharpening his nails with a piece of paper, but he had forgotten to do so. At this very moment, it was hard for others to see any reason other than the set of diagrams that had seeped into the chest armor of the 7 special police officers. Look at that person's head. It's exactly the same as these 7 diagrams. Alright, he just said something about his grandfather's formatting theory. Does it have anything to do with this? What kind of theory is that? Formatting theory? It was a fantastic idea that had been eliminated by reality a long time ago. It had been a long time since she had heard of it. Bai Xinyan strolled through the empty amusement park. The encrypted channel history loaded into her wristband was being searched through her retina. Papercut's formatting theory just so happened to be the keyword she was searching for. She shrugged her shoulders and laughed involuntarily. Also, the 7 diagrams had attracted the attention of practically everyone. Bai Xinyan was no exception. However, the angle of her attention was a bit different from the others. The tetrahedron, inscribed sphere and circumscribed sphere. It could be considered a very classic example in geometry classes. Its current performance was even more astonishing. However, Bai Xinyan had long since obtained the story of the tetrahedron from an internal report. That scene was much more exciting than its current situation. Soon, Bai Xinyan was able to connect the information she had just obtained with the information she previously knew. Luonan the scout. Oh, he seems to be a psychic. Before they self-destruct, the Luo family found new value in the theory that had been eliminated? Bai Xinyan blinked her eyes, cutting off the information that was constantly refreshing on her retina. She stuffed her hands into the pockets of her windbreaker, pursed her lips, and walked forward at a moderate pace. Looking at Luonan's situation, he is only a step away from his final destruction. Oh, isn't this a bit too wasteful? For the fastest and error-free novel reading, please visit Chapter 212. It's a doctor's professional ethics and morality. Bai Xinyan's lips curled into a mocking smile. She refused to let her train of thought continue. She had gained a lot today. What she needed to do now was to play a good role. The next moment, her attention was placed in the direction that a doctor should pay attention to. She watched the video from Cat Eye's shared perspective a few more times. Cat Eyes had been staring at Luonan for some time now. She could see that Luonan's cheeks, forehead, and other areas with dense nerves had a slight twitching sensation. His pupils had dilated and contracted. She could not see anything below his neck, but it was more or less the same. This was a sign that the nervous system had been strongly stimulated. At the same time, that very eye-catching layer of faint light blossomed from inside to outside. The corresponding power filled and supported these densely packed nerves, minimizing the destructive power brought by the strong stimulation of soul power to the greatest extent. Come to think of it, this was the fundamental reason why Luonan was able to use his soul strength without any misgivings. It was also a barrier that temporarily obstructed his path of destruction. Where was his luck? Bai Xinyan made a judgment with the eyes of a doctor. She immediately said in the encrypted channel, "Student Luonan's condition is pretty good right now. Is it thanks to Fairchild's punch?" "Yeah, that punch just now." Luonan didn't want the others to make wild guesses like they were watching a show. He borrowed Bai Xinyan's words to give a clear response. Bai Xinyan commented, "The current performance is similar to Fairchild's Shield of Truth. It should be his blessing. When I was in Luoyang City, I once saw the higher-ups of the Order of Justice leading a team to establish a settlement in the wilderness. Within a radius of 100 meters, all the members of the Order of Justice would receive the blessing of the Shield of Truth. Even if they were attacked by mutants, as long as they were C rank or below, most of them would be able to survive the first attack. It is extremely effective. Right, the Holy Knight Halo effect of the Order increases defense." Zhang Yingying was not silenced for long. She quickly spoke as a veteran gamer. "But this way the effect is only temporary." "Yeah, it's temporary." Luonan gave a simple response, even though the truth wasn't that simple. Yuan felt a headache coming on from the lack of urgency in their conversation. She directly asked Bai Xinyan, "White Salt, report your position." "There's still 40 meters left." I can already see people." Student Luonan's face seems to be glowing right now. "It sells very well." Bai Xinyan stopped. Her gaze passed through the soundproof wall and entered the room that was on the verge of collapse. The light over there was dim, forming a large luminous difference compared to where she was, but it didn't affect her at all. She raised her hand and waved, greeting the people in the private room. Yuan once again issued an order. Everyone in the private room, after rendezvous with White Salt, retreat according to the designated route. A clear evacuation route immediately appeared in the encrypted channel. At the same time, the route map was also displayed in Officer Shue's command data link. The latter was stunned for a moment, but he still sent the map to his subordinates and asked them to act according to the plan. Quick, quick, quick. Bamboo Pole was the one urging him on. He continued to dutifully refresh information. The sniper cannons at Yulon Hotel are about to finish calibrating. Their firing range covers all of Frost River reality. At that time, someone might be out of his mind and ignore Child. If the muzzle tilts up, we'll have to use a mop to collect your corpses. Get lost. I'm talking to you. Cat Eyes was in a terrible mood. She forcefully resisted the evil thought of tearing Luonan's throat to shreds. She fiercely pushed Luonan, indicating for him to retreat first. Luonan could more or less sense Cat Eye's mood. He didn't say much. He leaped over the broken soundproof wall in a few steps and arrived outside. He turned his head and looked inside. The special police under Xuanhuan were well trained. They quickly discarded their meaningless confusion and followed the plan to cover the evacuation in an orderly manner. Their tactical movements were still standard, although they might not be effective. This is professional ethics. Bai Xinyan expressed her understanding of the special police's actions. Luonan's gaze flitted across the face of this carefree and casual beauty. He lowered his eyes and whispered, "Ms. Bai. Hello. Nice to meet you. I have some understanding of you, student Luonan." Bai Xinyan winked at him. She looked very cordial and easy to get along with. However, Luonan did not forget the 2-hour assignment at the Frost River waterway that she had arranged earlier. Not to mention the burner simulator that was closely related to it. Luonan was a bit wary of this beautiful lady. It was because of these thoughts that Luonan's gaze turned back and cut across the special police officers. The visualized diagram projected on the chest area of these people's exoskeleton armors had yet to dissipate. It must be said that Luonan's move was a bit too high profile. If this scene were to spread out, Yen Yongbo would have a rather unfavorable association with Luonan. Luonan also considered whether or not he should take back these diagrams. But at this time, a deafening rumble could be heard. The battle between Fairchild and Baze had entered an extremely intense state. The high-end immersion experience area of Frost River reality was rapidly turning into ruins. Fairchild still held an unshakable advantage on the material plane up until now. However, the range of effect of the words of Krite continued to expand. The special ability of the words of Krite to find fulcrums everywhere was too deceptive. Even Cat Eyes had fallen for it. Luonan thought for a bit. In the end, he did not take back his blessing. He even added one to Xuanhuan as a precaution. Bai Xinyan observed with interest. Then she asked, "This move of yours is a bit like our family's old Bai's awakening phonetic interest. It's not just a simple awakening. There's also the flavor of a high-end integration. The method is cautious. Is this a technique of formatting theory? Your family's old Bai?" Luonan was stunned for a moment. He then realized that Bai Xinyan was referring to her father, Mr. Bai. From this form of address, it was impossible to tell that they were not on good terms. At the same time, Luonan admired Bai Xinyan's eyesight. He really was using the visualized diagram to imbue the rhythm of soul breathing into everyone's bodies, giving them blessings. Bai Xinyan's description was extremely apartment. This kind of lady really gave people a lot of pressure. Luonan grew more and more unwilling to converse with Bai Xinyan. It just so happened that a miserable scream came from within the crowd. The scream was sharp and trembling. It was simply the pain of having one's stomach ripped out. Oh, perhaps this was not an exaggeration. Several special police officers had just withdrawn from the room. They hurriedly lowered the body they were carrying. The person's back touched the ground and his entire body curled up into a ball. His face contorted and his mouth gaped wide open. But this time no sound came out. All he could do was smear his face with tears, snot and cold sweat. Wang Bingzhen. It was hard to say whether this fellow had a good life or a bad one. In the end he was brought out by the professional special police officers. But his current appearance was worse than death no matter how one looked at it. Bai Xinyan was the only one here with the qualifications to practice medicine. But she only swept a glance over Luonan before shaking her head. The words of Krite. Right now he's already a snake nest. He's also a type of human-shaped weapon. Perhaps some first ablatum is sizing us up through this person. For the fastest and most error-free novel reading, please visit Chapter 213. The unbroken night rain seemed to have no intention of stopping. Instead, it seemed to be intensifying. Standing at the edge of the top floors of the tall buildings, one could see the fine curtains of rain and smoke, as well as the hazy lights of the city. They covered every visible area except for the top floors themselves. The top floors of the 3 buildings that supported Frost River reality were still wet, but there was no rain falling from above. There was an invisible barrier that separated the top floors of the 3 tall buildings from the autumn rainy night of Xia City. This scene only lasted for about 20 minutes. At this time there were more than 10 people bustling about on each floor. Some were moving equipment and some were drawing diagrams on the ground. They shuttled back and forth and it was full of the feeling of haste. And Wang did not care what the people behind him were doing. He just stood quietly at the edge of the tall building. His skinny and short body was wrapped in a ceremonial robe that did not fit his body. He stood at the top of a tall building that was nearly 1,000 meters tall. He let the wind blow and he looked as if he could be blown off at any time. In reality, he stood very steadily. The shadow of his hood covered his face, but a faint light still seeped through his turbid pupils. The light reflected off the triangular flat roof of the building below, and the red and blue lights of police cars dotted all four sides. It was a dazzling sight. Under the chaotic lights, the tide of people endlessly surged out from many emergency passageways and spread out in all directions. They followed the foolish swarming effect and gathered at the outer perimeter. They were like a colony of ants separated by water. They swarmed endlessly. On every floor of the three tall buildings, there were large numbers of people sticking to the glass walls of the buildings. They were using all sorts of recording devices and were in spectator mode. They magnified the emotions of panic, fear, and excitement. They turned into turbid clouds that were hard to see and blended into the autumn rainy night. Xuanhuan's drooping eyelids nearly covered both of his eyes, but in reality, he was watching the roiling miasma with great interest. He savored the various subtleties within. Let alone a few minutes, he would not get tired even if he watched for an entire night. What's more, there was an even more interesting scene within the turbid clouds and miasma. Perhaps some first ablatum is sizing us up through this person. The conversation within Frost River reality was clearly transmitted back to him. Xuanhuan laughed involuntarily. It was just as the other side said. He borrowed the snake nest and used his mental clairvoyance to sweep over the faces of everyone around him. One was the woman in the trench coat who had pointed out the snake nest, and the other was the young man who had been blessed by Child's escape of truth. They're all extraordinary people. His mouth moved slightly as he evaluated. The lady in the trench coat had good eyesight and knowledge, and the depth of her abilities was hard to fathom. The psychic waves projected by the snake nest were actually unfathomable. She was at least a B-rank combatant. As for that young man, before he could finish his thought, the scene displayed by the snake nest's psychic wave scan suddenly became blurry and distorted. Then it completely collapsed. It was obvious that the snake nest he had just built had been destroyed, and Xuanhuan was slightly startled. Following which, his shriveled lips slightly parted, revealing a gap that was like a black hole. It could be considered a smile. Interfering with the operation of the words of Krite, not yielding an inch. Your soul power is impressive, and your spirit is full of vigor. Very good, very good. Just as Xuanhuan was looking at the scenery and judging the people, there was a black-robed man standing on the landing pad in the middle of the two roofs that were a few hundred meters away from the building he was on. These two were also wearing the attire of first ablatums, but they did not dare to leave their positions to view the scenery like Xuanhuan. Instead, they were very solemnly arranging the people around them. Whether it was drawing on the spot or transporting equipment, they were all carefully arranged and compared. They could not afford to make the slightest mistake. However, as the arrangements gradually became more and more appropriate, the two first ablatums found it increasingly difficult to calm down. As experienced first ablatums of the order, they were both well versed in the relevant knowledge and knew Child inside out. Of course, they could determine the odds of success in the upcoming conflict. The two of them communicated through the air for a moment. Finally, they could not help but ask Xuanhuan for instructions in unison. They walked on the mental plane that his subordinates could not perceive. The one in charge of communication was first ablatum xianxia, whose position was just below Xuanhuan's. Xuanhuan, setting up the formation this way is fast, but it's ultimately a stopgap measure. It's too hasty and it's hard to see full effect. According to our current estimates, the chances of us three first ablatums killing Child, even with the coordination of the formation diagram, do not exceed 30%. This is too risky. Should we reconsider? Xuanhuan did not immediately respond. He extended his two hands. His muscles and bones were exposed and they were speckled with spots. They were filled with the smell of age and decay. They were even trembling slightly. His thumb and index finger, which could no longer be extended, separated and pressed against each other. They formed a triangle, attempting to encompass all of Frost River reality. Why kill Child? Why kill Child? Xuanhuan asked again, haven't you had any doubts from the start of the operation until now? Or could it be that Child has ruined so many of your plans in Xia City over the years that you view him as an enemy? Is it only right and proper for you to take any action against him? The two first ablatums were somewhat dumbfounded. You were the one who proposed to kill Child, right? Now you're blaming us for not questioning, not speaking, and for seeking personal gain? Fortunately, xianxia had worked together with Xuanhuan for many years. He knew Xuanhuan's temperament, so he went along with Xuanhuan's tone and said, Xuanhuan, we actually have our concerns. After all, Child is an important figure on that side. He is the backbone of the most promising extraordinary. If things go wrong, the secular side and the truth side will completely shed all pretense of cordiality. This is something we do not wish to see. The two ends of the scale should maintain their distance. They should not interfere with each other and point fingers at each other. And Wang adjusted the angle of his finger bit by bit, but he directly determined Child's nature. Therefore, Child is not of the truth side. He is just an extremist, a paranoid, and an executioner. There should not be a place for him in the order. Zheng Zhao's heartstrings trembled. So you want to eliminate him? This way, according to Wang, dealing with Child was not just a request from their side. Instead, it had to be done in a more complex and callous context. But if this is the case, we should have a better opportunity. We should have a more leisurely plan. And Wang responded calmly, in terms of probability, any plan against a powerful person like Child has no more than a 50% chance of success. Other than meticulous planning, there is more of luck involved. Today's luck is good. The terrain, information, energy, and even an excuse are all in place. Why not give it a try? Give it a try? Zheng Zhao smiled bitterly. I'm afraid we can't bear the consequences if we don't succeed. If they did not kill the tiger, there would be endless trouble in the future. If they really angered Child, it would lead to crazy revenge. The secular first oblatums would probably have to sleep with their eyes open. Just the thought of it made them go crazy. What consequences can there be? And Wang coughed twice and turned around. He slowly walked toward the area where the array had been set up. The gate of truth is about to open. Even if that paranoid person is alive, can he be distracted? Stuck. Only one chapter today. Sorry. For the fastest and error-free novel reading, please visit Chapter 214. Zheng Zhao was speechless for a moment. Only when Wang was in position and the array diagrams on the 3 floors began to adjust and operate did Zheng Zhao come to his senses. Are you joking, Wang? Currently, there was news circulating within the order that the gate of truth was about to open. It was said that one could see the true form of the holy relic, the scales of truth, through this mystical gate. They could unlock the highest authority and obtain supreme wisdom. As the first oblatum in charge of local missionary matters, Zheng Zhao knew very well that this was the product of some priests using the recent earthquake in Xia City as a guide to spread their religion. They borrowed a few words from the scriptures of the church and used them as inspiration. They fabricated this rumor, claiming that the location of the Gate of Truth was near Xia City. The earthquakes that had occurred for many days were the result of the holy relic constantly approaching the material world, causing interference. Every year, the priests of the secular side of the Order of Justice would come up with similar rumors to attract believers and expand the influence of the order. Zheng Zhao had long since grown accustomed to this sight. It just so happened that the Order of Justice had seized the lead in analyzing and utilizing the human-faced arachnid. They had made considerable progress in their research and were about to launch a new product of faith. Zheng Zhao wanted to ride on the momentum and did not place any restrictions on these rumors. How could Wang believe such a groundless rumor? How could he tie up Fairchild's hands and feet? The old man's brain is muddled. Another first oblatum and Qingli sent a message through a private channel. Zheng Zhao did not go along with this. Although Qingli's words were rude, he was Wang's grandnephew. He usually put on an honest and upright face and relied on insulting his own elders to get along with others. God knows what his own family members were saying behind his back. Plus, Zheng Zhao did not believe that there was a problem within Wang's brain at all. Wang was a secret-bound first oblatum, but he was older than 99% of the Heartseer first oblatums. It was just that he was too old when he received the revelation of the holy relic. His fleshly body could not bear it, limiting his accomplishments. Even so, the various priests, first seats, and even the Lord Archoblatum had to address him as Wang. Over time they even forgot his real name. Wang had never disgraced this respectful title. Perhaps this old man, who was over 100 years old, had an unbearably decrepit body, but his understanding of the situation and his thoughts were clear and deep. He far surpassed these clear-sworn first oblatums. At the very least, Zheng Zhao was ashamed of his inferiority. He could not help but think further. Was there some deeper meaning in Wang's words? Zheng Zhao recalled the relevant records. According to the Holy Bible of the Church, the opening of the Gate of Truth was the beginning of the change of the world. Last time, it was the aberrations that swept across the globe, completely changing the Earth's ecology and breaking the shackles of humanity's potential, bringing a revelation to the human world. The next opening of the Gate of Truth would undoubtedly change the direction of the human world once again. As for whether it would be prosperity or destruction, the canon did not specify. No matter what direction it took, how earth-shattering was this? If the news was true, then the upper echelons of the order would have exploded a long time ago. The first seat of the Sacred Hall of Justice, the various illuminating First Ablatums, the High Ablatums, and even the elusive Lord Archiblatum would have pushed aside all obstructions and gathered in Xia City. A storm had already surged in this place. How could the current situation be the same? Oh wait. If it was the Gate of Truth, if Xia City was truly in turmoil, what benefits would the Order of Justice gain? As the saying goes, pull one hair and the whole body moves. If such a huge scene were to occur, would they just wait for the government, the military, the ability user society, or other financial powers to share the fruits of their labor? Zheng Xiao suddenly shivered as his thoughts reached this point. Although he was wearing a thick black robe, his entire body still trembled unconsciously. This was not fear but the sudden excitement and pressure. Xuanhuan, are you saying that the Gate of Truth really exists? Is this true or false? And Qingli forgot to push Zheng Xiao in front of him to block the arrow. He could not help but interject. Why isn't there any news from the upper echelons? Even if there was news, it wouldn't be for people of your level to know. Zheng Xiao had always suspected that Xuanhuan knew that his greatest strength was his self-awareness. That was why he transferred him over to form a team within Qingli, a young First Ablatum whose ambitions exceeded his abilities. However, even though Qingli had 1,000 faults, his brain was not stupid. He immediately fired off a barrage of questions. Xuanhuan, did the Lord Archiblatum have a sacred decree? If the Gate of Truth is truly about to open, do we have a grasp on the time and place? Could today's matter be just a reason? Yes, could it be just a reason? Zheng Xiao was a bit uncertain for a time. If it really was what they meant by repairing the plank road in the open but crossing the Tsang road in the dark, they could borrow the conflict and internal strife between them and Fairchild to allow the secular side and the truth side of the order to converge in Xia City in large numbers, forming an absolute advantage. Then what were their current arrangements? Sometimes, Qingli was truly the best partner, especially when his brain was burning. He seized the opportunity to voice out Zheng Xiao's doubts. If it really is like this, then we've all become the stage set? If Fairchild really is someone who can coordinate with us, then what credibility does this reason have? Xuanhuan had only answered one question, but he had clarified many matters. Zheng Xiao and Qingli were both silent. They needed time to digest everything. The night rain grew heavier and heavier. Even the rooftops, which were shielded from the rain, could still hear the sound of falling raindrops. Xuanhuan did not give the two too much time to think. Soon the mental domains of the two shuddered. Black light and white threads interweaved, and a classical hanging scale appeared in the depths of the void where it was difficult for the eyes of ordinary people to see. It announced its existence to the two. The black and white plates were placed on each side, and each had 3 chains of the same color hanging from them. The central frame was a strict contrast, and the base below was heavy and heavy. Aside from this, there were no other superfluous decorations. It was simple and plain. This was the projection of the scales of truth. It was the paramount sacred object of the order. No matter when, where, or what form it appeared, one needed to display a respectful attitude. The two First Ablatums bowed at the same time and silently chanted the scriptures, temporarily washing away the distracting thoughts in their minds. At this moment, the scales of truth were not in a balanced state. The white plate was like a heavy weight. It sank to the bottom, causing the black plate on the other side to rise high. It gave people the feeling that it would topple over in the next moment. This unbalanced state was often the starting symbol of a powerful incantation of the order. Every method after that was to bring the unbalanced state back to a balanced state. They would obtain inconceivable and mysterious power in the process. However, the state of the scales of truth this time was somewhat strange. The white plate that sank was completely empty. At the very least, no heavy object could be seen. On the contrary, there was a small snake the thickness of a chopstick on the other side of the black plate. Its body was coiled around the plate, and its mouth was biting the snake's tail. Turbid clouds roiled around its body. This little snake biting its own tail was the materialization of the words of Krite. It symbolized the negative power of pain that they controlled within Frost River reality. It was also the only counterweight that needed to be constantly adjusted in the later stages of the game to achieve balance. However, from the looks of the unbalanced state, its weight seemed to be rather insufficient. It seems that the operation of the words of Krite is not smooth. Actually, Zheng Xiao wanted to ask which sacrifice was placed on the truth side, the white plate. And Qingli said, The absorption of the Krite is constantly being disrupted. Could it be that the ability users inside are up to no good? And Wang declined to comment. Let's take a look. For the fastest and most error-free novel reading, please visit Chapter 215. And Wang gave the order. Whether it was Xianxia or Qingli, both of them had to instantly gather their thoughts and take their respective positions. At this time, the equipment on the roofs of the 3 buildings had already been installed and turned on at the same time. The one that occupied the core function was a special 3D projector. In an instant, 5 colored rays of light shot out, interweaving into countless layers of ever-changing structures. The complex array diagram that would normally take several hours to arrange was presented in the form of a projection. These scattered rays of light had all been specially processed to carry a certain amount of energy. If an ordinary person was exposed to this light, they would have been burned on the spot. However, under the control of the 3 first ablatums, not a single bit of the energy within the rays of light was wasted. They converged into the various basic structures of the array diagram and temporarily fused together with their respective auras. Every first ablatum seemed to be wrapped in a cocoon of light. Within the inner layer of the cocoon of light, the basic runes of the demonic curse were arranged in order to construct a single spiral chain-like structure. It revolved around the body and formed the inner ring of the foundation. On this foundation, countless arcs radiated outwards, intertwining with the multi-pointed stars on the outer layer. They cleverly pieced together to form several dozen relatively independent gear structures of different sizes. Bit by bit, they were like an enormous machine. It rumbled and hummed as it operated. The outermost spherical boundary was formed from several dozen to over 100 ring-shaped arrays. The dim and slightly gray light was like rapidly flowing muddy water. It swished as it flowed. It seemed as if it could break through the canal and overflow at any time. However, it also obtained a powerful tension from this. Just like this, the 3 roofs of the 3 buildings had nearly identical magic arrays. They formed an equilateral triangular structure with bright ends and shapeless edges. The structure had a name. It was the evolution field. It was jointly constructed by the 3 first ablatums. It was a wondrous land that they all shared. Of course, as the secret-bound first ablatum, and Wang certainly had a higher level of authority. He also occupied a dominant position. In the center of the evolution field, the scales of truth that were in an unbalanced state were reflected. At this time, even though it had yet to reach the material plane, it had already entered the visual range of the surrounding believers. Immediately, these priests and members of the Order of Knights knelt down in accordance with the order's etiquette. More or less, their hearts of piety and reverence converged into the array diagram. They transformed into specific information and intersected with the energy, making it more active. The activated magic array was gradually gaining control over the surrounding area. The most direct change was the range of detection. None of the 3 first ablatums specialized in mental senses. They were separated by a kilometer in a straight line. If they wanted to understand the current situation of Frost River reality, they would need to use the words of Krite to form a snake nest or use a humanoid weapon like Baze as a fulcrum. But now, within the evolution field that the 3 of them shared, the information gathered by Frost River reality, no matter how numerous and complex it was and how thousands of strands it was sorted out and gathered within this triangular structure. In the end, it took shape and was projected into the souls of the 3 first ablatums. The image went from blurry to clear, covering an area of about 100 square meters, showing all the creatures in it. Moreover, under the effect of some special mechanism, the image was automatically focused, placing the most important person in the center and marking it. Although the location of the target wasn't much different. It was a child who appeared to be only 15 or 16 years old. He was dressed casually and looked like a student who came to Frost River reality to play on the weekends. Among the people who were traveling with him, any one of them was a member of society who was a lot older than him. But at this time, the group of people who were cautiously walking around unconsciously surrounded the young man in the center. 8 tall and sturdy special police officers wearing exoskeleton armors held guns and shields. They naturally formed a defensive formation. They looked like they were escorting a high-ranking official. Is that him? Xianxia and Qingli were a bit surprised. And Wang still did not speak. The information gathering and analysis of the evolution field did not stop here. Many special symbols and markings from within the order were sprinkled down. Everyone had a share. The parts that needed special attention were clearly marked in an eye-catching manner. The 3 first ablatums saw that those parts were astonishingly similar. They were exactly the same. They all appeared on everyone's chest. They all had the same form of existence and the same composition. Tetrahedron, inscribed sphere, circumscribed sphere. This is the archetype format. As a qualified clear-sworn first ablatum, and Qingli had an understanding of the extraordinary theories of the various powers. Naturally, he would not forget the archetype format theory that was currently the hottest topic in the world. Zheng Xiao hesitated for a moment but still made a correction. The archetype format is the standard method of strengthening the fleshly body. The current situation should be the product of the mental interfering with the material plane. And Qingli choked and wanted to say more. But at this time Wang finally clearly transmitted his thoughts. The words of Kreit's operation is obstructed. This young man is the direct cause. He is not old but he already possesses considerable soul power. Moreover, the operation method is cautious. He naturally belongs to the side of order. Not too long ago, he received the blessing of Fairchild's Shield of Truth. Fairchild? Shield of Truth. Zheng Xiao and Qingli were fiercely shocked. What relationship does he have with Fairchild? Who cares what relationship he has? And Wang's thoughts were still indifferent. Right now we only need to know that Fairchild has blessed this young man. This young man's blessing is even more generous. Wherever he goes, the power of chaos and disorder will be restricted. Do you have any information on this young man? Of course, the Order had informants in the Ability User Society. They might not be able to touch upon some deep information, but they could always find basic information that was placed on the surface. It didn't take long for the three first ablatums to get to know this young man all over again. And Wang did not conceal his special attitude toward this young man at all. Luo Nan is a young man who has just joined the Order. A young man with boundless prospects. A young man without too much background. This is the power of talent. If we had met him a few years ago, we could have brought him into the Order and carefully trained him. Perhaps he could have contended for a holy disciple's seed. Zheng Zhao's heart stirred. And Qingli had contended for a holy disciple, time and time again in the past. He was unsuccessful, so he sadly returned to Xia City and became the clear-sworn first ablatum. He had always brooded over this. And Wang's words. Separated by several hundred meters of the night sky, he could not see in Qingli's expression. But then Wang issued an order. Qingli. And Wang. The secular side is not the secular world. We set the rules for the secular world. Therefore, when we act, we need to find a reason. We also need to make our attitude clear. And Wang. Zheng Xiao could hear an ominous taste in his words. He could not help but want to warn Wang. However, Qingli had already been struck to the core by a few words from his granduncle. He was put on the stage. He responded practically without thinking, "And Wang, please instruct me. We need to make it clear to the world that the Order is different from the scattered ability user society. We are also different from those politicians who believe in trickery. We have our principles. We absolutely will not compromise. Those who rashly interfere with the Order's internal affairs must pay the price. Right now you are the judge. Make your verdict." For the fastest and most error-free novel reading, please visit Chapter 216. Ever since Luo Nan walked out of the room, he did not feel too good. After rendezvousing with Bai Xinyan, the route they were currently taking was precisely the area that the Order of Justice's firepower had recently passed through. As he walked through the empty amusement park, everything he saw was a mess. The ground was littered with helmets and equipment thrown down by the panic-stricken tourists. Occasionally, they would come across corpses that had been destroyed by the kinetic energy of the enormous bullets. The automatic sprinkler equipment above their heads had already been turned on. It was raining inside the amusement park. After the flesh and blood had been smeared on the ground, faint red blood flowed beneath their feet. This scene was hard to imagine for the people who had been stuck in the room. At the very least, Luo Nan never imagined that he would see Frost River reality like this. At this time he had to constantly repeat those meaningless words. "Yes, don't worry. I'm fine. I'm really fine. I'm with the special police. I'm very safe. Don't worry." The person talking to him was none other than Imochio, whose legs had already turned to jelly. When Luo Nan led the special police back into Frost River reality, Imochio did not stop them. He was considering that Luo Nan was acquainted with the police officer. If Luo Nan could establish a good relationship with Luo Nan, it would be easier to plead for leniency for Mo Peng and the others. Who knew that a dozen or so minutes after entering the amusement park, news of a terrorist attack and the special police being knocked down would spread. Then came the sound of gunshots. All of Frost River reality was in an uproar. Imochio and the others were brought to the periphery by the chaotic flow of people. They wanted to contact Luonan, but no one picked up their calls. Imochio was so shocked that his soul left his body. Then he considered that if he were to continuously call Luonan under special circumstances, it might bring trouble to Luonan. He was in a dilemma, tormented to the point of insanity. Finally, Luonan noticed the missed call on his wristband while he was moving from the room. He dialed it and Imochio's burning chest finally cooled down. Once a person's pressure was released, it was inevitable that they would chatter endlessly. Luonan patiently chatted with Imochio for a few rounds. From this, he gained some understanding of the situation outside. After the so-called terrorist attack, the police set up a blockade around Frost River Reality and evacuated the surrounding citizens. Everyone believed that the police would quickly rush into Frost River Reality to control the situation. But who would have thought that after gathering hundreds of people, the police were still hesitating at the periphery? They only sent some combat robots and unmanned aerial vehicles to enter. From time to time they would rescue a few trapped citizens or carry them out. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Apart from a few corpses, there was no other movement, causing many people to be dissatisfied. Luonan nodded when he heard how the police handled the matter. Yes, this is correct. Frost River Reality was currently enveloped by the power of the Order of Justice's words of Krite. Any living creature that entered would likely be reduced to a snake nest, becoming a helper for the Order of Justice. The police had obviously been instructed to do so. Imochio didn't understand. Master. Luonan had no way of explaining these things to Imochio. He just said, Mo Peng and the others have already been taken to the police station, right? That way they'll be safer. Third brother Yu, senior sister Xiaolin, senior sister Tian, and the others should quickly retreat. The further the better. I just heard from an insider that this group of terrorists might be carrying weapons of mass destruction. Ah. Don't speak carelessly like this. Shui Weiluan heard Luonan spouting nonsense and hurriedly stopped him. Luonan made an apologetic gesture to Shui Weiluan and continued to explain to Imochio, I'm following the special forces. I might evacuate in another direction. You guys don't need to worry about me. Just go as far as you can. Also, don't tell your family about this for now. Do you think that's possible? Imochio laughed bitterly in the end. Right now the cameras of the entire world are pointed at you guys. Luonan ended the call with Imochio. He could not help but imagine the rescue and corpses that Imochio spoke of. An indescribable feeling of discomfort assaulted him once more. He could not help but let out another sigh. Shui Weiluan saw that Luonan had ended the call and walked over to remind him a second time. Luonan, it's true that you are an expert but your family members are not. Their endurance is different. You can't guarantee that they won't spread the news outside and be used by others. Luonan just wanted Imochio to take this seriously and quickly retreat. Comparing the words of Krite to a weapon of mass destruction was not too out of line. However, Shui Weiluan was an elder. Luonan obediently complied when he said this. Shui Weiluan had only said this out of professional habit. Actually, he had seen Luonan display the miraculous protective diagram technique and associated it with this young man's identity as an expert. It was inevitable that he would have some misgivings. Shui Weiluan saw that Luonan was still able to maintain the respectful attitude of a junior. His cultivation was extraordinary. Shui Weiluan's inherent impression of Luonan as a drug addict was immediately diluted. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Many people had a favorable impression of Luonan. Shui Weiluan did not want to leave behind any sort of stereotypical impression for his son's good friend. He just so happened to have some unresolved doubts, so he resolved them all at once. He reached out with his hand and drew 2 strokes on the half-covered, incorporeal diagram on his chest. Visible light waves rippled in the air. The diagram slightly warped and deformed before returning to normal. This diagram can defend against mental attacks, right? How long can it last? What's it called again? Format pyramid. Just call it that, uncle. Luonan laughed. It's a bit of an exaggeration to say that it can defend against mental attacks. It can only be said that it can avoid interference on the mental plane. If we encounter a direct attack, there will be a buffer to allow us time to react. Luonan looked at the chests of the group of people around him as he spoke. They were all supported by his format pyramid. Luonan felt a bit more at ease in his heart. His voice became a lot clearer. As for how long it can last, as long as I stand here, there won't be any problems. Student Luonan, are you sure that you are fine? Someone spoke before Luonan's words fell to the ground. The emphasis fell on the second you, implying something. The speaker was none other than Bai Xinyan. This medical doctor had been looking at her wristband with her head lowered the entire time ever since the group of people had followed their retreat route. It seemed that she was looking up information. She turned a blind eye to everything around her. Now that she had opened her mouth with great difficulty, it seemed like she was undermining Luo Nan. Ms. Bai. Luo Nan suddenly became speechless halfway through his words. This was because Bai Xinyan had moved a bit closer at this time. She extended her arm, half pressing and half hugging him. She wrapped her arm around his shoulder and walked forward just like that. Her posture was ambiguous, drawing the sidelong glances of many people to the side. Luo Nan clearly knew that Bai Xinyan didn't mean it that way. But when Bai Xinyan's arm wrapped around him, their bodies pressed together, and he felt the indescribable softness on his shoulder, his body unconsciously stiffened. Light touches qualified. And then Bai Xinyan not only wrapped her arm around his shoulder, she even used her other hand to lightly pull his neck. She looked at the back of his ear and the side of his neck. The warmth of her fingertips seeped into Luo Nan's skin, and the throbbing of Luo Nan's blood vessels and nerves were fed back to her by her fingertips. There's only one update today. The next update is tomorrow morning at around 8 o'clock. Last month I lost my moral standing. I suffered the wrath of heaven during the holidays. I'm working overtime and I'm stuck. That woman has a problem at work. It's a complete mess. I don't dare to say anything. I need to find my rhythm first. Chapter 217. Hey, are you going to take another bite next? Zhang Yingying couldn't help but shout. Bai Xinyan and Luo Nan were doing shady deals through Cat Eye's shared perspective. The members of the society in the encrypted channel could all see it clearly. In the end, Luo Nan was thin-skinned. He instinctively wanted to struggle when he heard this, but Bai Xinyan's finger on his neck suddenly felt warm and then cold. The speed of the change was so fast that Luo Nan might not have been able to tell if it wasn't for his training in the Frost River waterway and his sensitivity to heat and cold sensors. It was because he was able to tell clearly that the two completely opposite stimuli made him shiver uncontrollably. At this moment, the other hand that landed on his shoulder blade also began to exert force. It was fine at first. It was just a simple pressure. But later, even with the support of the Shield of Truth, Luo Nan felt his muscles, bones, and skin move under Bai Xinyan's fingertips. The pain assaulted him and he couldn't help but frown. Ms. Bai. Luo Nan nearly jumped up in the next moment because Bai Xinyan's finger, which had been on his neck, suddenly slid down along his collar to touch his chest. Wow! A wave of exclamations filled the encrypted channel. The vigilant special police officers couldn't help but look over. Even though Bai Xinyan was a great beauty who could make one's heart beat faster, Luo Nan couldn't stand this routine. His right shoulder was pressed down and his arm was powerless. He could only raise his left hand and firmly press down on Bai Xinyan's slender hand that had slid down to his chest through his clothes. But when he raised his arm and bent his elbow, the tip of his elbow collided with Bai Xinyan's body behind him. It seemed to have collided in the wrong place. Luo Nan's body froze again. And at this time Bai Xinyan's laughing voice rang in his ear. Pressure, pain and temperature are all fine. Nothing abnormal can be seen in your body. Your movements were automatic and your sense of balance was very accurate. Not bad. As she spoke, Bai Xinyan pulled away from him as if nothing had happened. It was as if nothing had happened. Only now did Luo Nan realize that Bai Xinyan was doing a functional test on him. But what did she mean by doing this all of a sudden? I just looked up some information. Targets that receive the support of the Shield of Truth will have a substantial increase in defensive power. But if they endure it for a long time, they will often have problems afterward. This chapter is not complete. Please continue. Dislocation of muscles and bones, nerve damage and other symptoms. Research believes that the power of the Shield of Truth, while supporting the structure of the human body, also creates distortions. Or perhaps, it numbs the senses of the person receiving the blessing, making it impossible for them to accurately grasp the limits of the body. But from what I can see so far, student Luo Nan, you haven't shown any of these symptoms. Is Child's iron fist of love more exquisite? The encrypted channel was filled with oh sounds of sudden realization, but how many of them could really listen to this explanation? Luo Nan recovered from his awkwardness, but he could not help but admire Bai Xinyan's judgment. It seemed to match the reality of the situation completely. The only thing she had overlooked was the effect Luo Nan himself had played in this blessing. Back when Fairchild punched Luo Nan, he injected the power of the mental and the material into Luo Nan's body, covering his entire body. This blessing was exquisite to the point of being inconceivable. It seemed to seep into every cell of Luonan's body. Under the infiltration of this heavy power, the millions and millions of basic units within Luonan's body were strengthened layer by layer. They were also slightly distorted and dislocated. It was the same as taking some of the powerful basic structures of the Shield of Truth and reflecting them into Luonan's body. This caused the endurance of Luonan's fleshly body to increase dramatically. Bai Xinyan's judgment up to this step was correct. It could be assumed that a normal target receiving the blessing would not be able to receive this preferential treatment on the cellular level. However, the reason why Fairchild's strength exertion was so exquisite and only strengthened on the basic level was to give Luonan room for further control. Any other person would be stupefied for a period of time when faced with the exquisite structure of the Shield of Truth. It was already quite good for Luonan to follow the rules and regulations. However, Luonan had just received Fairchild's demonstration not too long ago. He was not clear on the particularly subtle details, but he could not be clearer on the basic concepts. Therefore, when Luonan unleashed his soul strength, he very naturally and very boldly utilized these basic structures. He used his soul configuration as a reference and combined it with the My Heart's a Prison format formed from 5 years of taking medicine and visualizing. He underwent a second transformation, constructing a configuration outline that was more suitable for him. Luonan was still making fine adjustments to this configuration outline up until now, in order to seek a more harmonious and consistent state. Naturally, such precise operations would not cause the state shown in Bai Xinyan's data to appear. Only, this chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Unfortunately, this sort of adjustment was temporary. It was a temporary transformation under the blessing of the Shield of Truth. Once the effect wore off, it would return to its original state. This point was similar to what Bai Xinyan had said. Luonan already understood Bai Xinyan's intentions, but her method still made Luonan brood over it. The heat on his face had yet to completely fade. He spoke a bit louder in order to conceal it. I just said that there's no problem. I was the one who asked White Salt to confirm it. Mr. Luo, don't blame her. Yuan was the one who responded. Moreover, it was not in the encrypted channel. It was a direct sound wave transmission. Luonan was a bit stunned. He raised his head to look forward and saw Yuan, still dressed in her professional attire. She stood within the hazy mist that sprinkled down from the ceiling. She bowed slightly to him. Her body was still dry and cool under the cover of the mist. It was as if there was an incorporeal power isolating her from external contamination. However, when her gaze pierced through the mist and arrived at his side, Luonan clearly felt a thin layer of haze hidden within her originally clear and bright pupils. It was hard for Luonan to be angry at this female secretary who had always given him selfless assistance. He shook his head, but Yuan spoke before he could say anything. My next mission will be a bit more troublesome. If Mr. Luo can temporarily possess a stronger endurance after receiving the blessing of the Shield of Truth, he will be able to fully display his abilities. This will reduce the difficulty of the mission by quite a bit. Luonan's eyes lit up. He was just about to ask when Zhang Yingying was even more excited than him in the encrypted channel. Oh, are you going to start scribbling? Wait a bit. I'll be right there. Hey, it looks like you didn't bring that black book. Do you want me to find a pen and paper, a flexible screen or something? There's a supermarket right next to me. Leister, go. See if there are any high-end brands. Take 2. Shuelei, who was traveling with her, was certainly embarrassed. It was quite a while before he faintly replied, Are you really going to take them? Luonan was also baffled. Zhang Yingying had an even more excited appearance than him. What the hell was going on? However, Yuan rejected Zhang Yingying's conjecture. No. What I need right now is Mr. Luo's all-encompassing perception and long-range strike abilities. Chapter 218. All-encompassing sensing? Kitty, someone is going to steal your job. Zhang Yingying chattered happily. Luonan participated in the society's operations with the identity of a scout. His identity was classified, so he did not reveal it to the public. However, it was impossible to be completely impenetrable within the society. At the very least, it was impossible to hide it from people like Zhang Yingying. She did not find it strange that Luonan possessed this ability. It was just that she did not directly expose his identity as a scout. But Yuan was the one who strongly advocated the secret setting of missions. She took the initiative to blur the boundary between Luonan and a scout. It was somewhat unusual. Zhang Yingying would not let this opportunity slip by. She immediately sent Yuan a private message. Hey, you knowingly break the law. This time Yuan did not respond at all. Luonan was a bit surprised, but he was more concerned about Yuan's request. Speaking of which, ever since he met this secretary, this was the first time she had given him a mission so clearly instead of a protective restriction. It made him a bit eager. Yuan spoke softly. Bamboo Pole, report the situation at Frost River Reality. Okay. Bamboo Pole responded lazily. According to the secretary's request, I'll send everyone a picture. As they spoke, a fully labeled real-time dynamic map was released in the encrypted channel. It was a remodeled map of Frost River Reality's elevation structure. It was translucent and very clear. The secretary Ying and student Shuelei have already cleaned up Frost River Reality. The military and police battle machines have already entered the scene. Most areas have been cleaned up, but there are still some areas that cannot be controlled. From the search of the surveillance system, there are still around 5 to 7 gunmen of the order. Most of them are concentrated at the junction of Area A and Area B, controlling the external passageways. At the same time, they are under the protection of bays and the other humanoid weapons. The red dot on the dynamic map is the one. Luonan looked very attentively. He took the initiative to ask, how many are there like bays? Cough. Boss Luo, there is only one humanoid weapon like bays. If there were 2 more, you wouldn't have been able to leave the room alive. Bamboo Pole had to correct Luonan's misconceptions. However, there are slightly inferior humanoid weapons. They are the Ablatum Knights of the Knights of Equity. Xia City only has a small team. Including bays, there are a total of 9 people. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Since they were after Fairchild, they should all be here, or at least half of them. They should be near the area where Fairchild and bays were fighting. The problem is that even if these people didn't merge with the first Ablatum's power, they are still equivalent to C+ level ability users. Purely relying on the monitoring system, it is extremely difficult for us to detect their existence. In other words, you want me to find all these people? Luonan didn't feel that this mission was that difficult, but there was one thing he didn't understand. A C+ rank ability user. How powerful are they? Bamboo Pole found a reference for him. The secretary's entry assessment is C+, which is probably the highest level of an awakened. Luonan drew in a breath of cold air. He had seen Yuan fight many times. That kind of swift and fierce rhythm made people feel that even if it was a thick steel wall, she could still cut through it with one slash. With Yuan's strength, there were 8 or 9 of them at once. Of course, the highest level of the association's assessment can only be C+. I personally believe that the secretary's strength should be able to reach B+. Speaking of which, Boss Luo, your entry evaluation is only E+, which is a serious underestimation. Thanks. Luonan expressed his thanks to Bamboo Pole, but he still couldn't figure out how to calculate the strength of a C+ rank. Perhaps the only people who were more confused than him were Shui Weiluan and a few other special police officers outside the circle. Bamboo Pole simply switched to another reference. Then let's take Ying for example. Her strength is only at C, but her white rainbow has an attack power that can reach the C+ level. Zhang Ying's image flashed in Luonan's mind, and he let out a breath. That's good. You with the surname Luo, why don't you stick your dog head out and try? Zhang Ying's furious voice came from far away. Her snow-white long legs swayed, stomping on the water as she came over. Her imposing manner was oppressive, causing the special police officers on guard to move out of the way one after another, making a path for her. Luonan went, Only then did he realize that his mouth had been a bit too fast. Though his impression of Zhang Ying had always been complicated, she had given him a secret warning tonight. She had asked for pen and paper, and her attitude was extremely good. Those few words really weren't quite appropriate. Dad, are you all right? Shuelei, who was following closely behind Zhang Ying, was extremely excited to see his dad. He rushed forward, but in the blink of an eye, an armored fist smashed into his head. This chapter isn't finished. Please turn the page. His body immediately became shorter by half a length. Seeing his friend end up like this, Luonan was really worried that his head would be imitated by Zhang Ying's white rainbow pierces the sun. He hurriedly raised his hand in apology. I'm sorry. Oh Ying, your white rainbow feels a lot sharper. Zhang Ying sneered, it's too late to kiss ass now. Luonan spread his hands, feeling a bit helpless. The heavens took pity on him. He really was speaking the truth. When he looked over just now, he discovered that Zhang Ying's cloud ribbons, which flowed endlessly on her body, had never been so clear and transparent since he met her. It was as if there really was a stream of flowing water winding around her body, reflecting a cold light. Because of this change, he nearly spilled the beans just now, exposing the fact that he could look directly at the white rainbow. He was able to guess that Zhang Yingying should have made a breakthrough in her abilities in the past week. That was why such an obvious change had appeared. She had just made some progress, but she was denied by a single sentence from him. Anyone would be anxious. Luckily, Shuelei couldn't stand his father's lecture at this time. He came over with a face full of dirt and grime to take refuge, indirectly covering for Luo Nan. He came up and gave Luo Nan a heavy hug. "Nanster, thank you so much. I just heard my dad say that it's all thanks to you being there. Actually, Uncle has always been taking care of me." Luo Nan's attitude was naturally different towards this friend of the same age who got along well with him. He had experienced life and death together. He patted Shuelei's thick shoulders and sighed, "Uncle was right. Leister, you really shouldn't have charged in. How's senior sister Xiaolin? She's not from the same world." Shuelei took 2 steps back after the hug, revealing a depressed expression. These are her exact words. Sigh. Shuelei still wanted to say something, but he turned his head to look at the surrounding environment and the various people. In the end, he could only smile bitterly. No matter how he tried to argue, it all seemed pale and powerless in the face of ironclad proof. At this time, Bamboo Pole coughed a few times in the encrypted channel, asking for attention. "Everyone, the small talk and such is enough. I haven't finished talking about the situation here." Red Fox, who was next to Bamboo Pole, came back to his senses at this time. "Hey, what are you saying all this for? Do you really want to fight the secular side? Go through fire and water with Fairchild? Don't you see that there are plenty of routes to retreat from? Haven't you guys stayed long enough in that damn place?" Chapter 219. The Red Fox fired off a barrage of questions. Bamboo Pole, who was beside him as the speaker, calmly explained to him, "Well, it's not that we're helping Child. You see, there are currently nearly 100 innocent citizens trapped in Frost River reality. All of them are in Area A of the first level, and they are divided into nearly 20 gathering points. Each gathering point has anywhere from 2 to 7 people." Luo Nan was listening attentively when Zhang Yingying unforgivingly came over. Bai Xinyan, who was next to Luo Nan, held Zhang Yingying's shoulder to no avail. "Hey, you said that you feel sharper. Is that true?" "Really?" Luo Nan's reply was resolute and decisive. "Empty words? Who would believe you? Here, draw me another portrait." "Ha!" Luo Nan wasn't able to react for a time. Zhang Yingying had already stuffed a thin leather notebook into his hand. She stabbed a pencil into his hand in passing. She was very considerate and sharpened it, but it nearly pierced his palm. In this kind of amusement park, it was really difficult to find something like a paper notebook. What Zhang Yingying gave him should be some kind of game accessory. The outer and inner layers were all gaudy. Luo Nan was a bit speechless for a time. His sketchy style was actually able to garner fans? Moreover, it was a strange woman like Zhang Yingying. Bai Xinyan was also curious. "Do you like his paintings?" Zhang Yingying was all smiles. Her anger could no longer be seen. Shamans can go back in time and foresee things. They can see things that others haven't seen. The boss said that my current perception of the white rainbow is too subjective and requires multiple references. His painting is simple and straightforward, and it saves me the most effort. Luo Nan could only laugh bitterly at this reason. He casually flipped open the book, but then he raised his head to look at the ceiling. Mist was sprinkling down from there. The mist had long since soaked Luo Nan's hair. Now that the mist had sprinkled onto the book, a patch soon split open. Zhang Yingying rolled her eyes and didn't make things difficult for him. "After this, you have to give it to me tomorrow. Do you have mine?" Bai Xinyan joined in the fun. From beginning to end, Luo Nan still held a bit of vigilance against this person. He could only lower his head and smile, putting on an introverted and shy appearance. However, his attention was quickly drawn to Bamboo Pole's explanation. The existence of nearly 100 citizens is a headache. Currently, the Knights of Equity have no plans to capture any hostages. However, they are not prepared to let anyone out either. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Bamboo Pole then played a video which showed that the gunmen were guarding the exit. As long as a citizen tried to escape, they would shoot through their legs with light weapons, leaving them to scream and groan. It was a very cruel scene. At the side, Shuelei hissed. He was very uncomfortable with this scene and couldn't help but mutter, "Isn't this a hostage? They're just building a snake nest." Bamboo Pole adjusted the screen so that everyone could see what was going on. Those who tried to escape, after their legs were pierced, became the best carrier for the words of Krite. The pain they suffered increased by several times, but they couldn't even faint. They could only struggle and scream, letting the invisible viper slither in and out. Soon they were on the verge of death. The screams and struggles were also releasing a huge amount of negative psychic waves, affecting the trapped people who were not injured but were dominated by fear and panic, causing them to spread to the snake nest. The more densely packed the snake nests are, the more the Order of Justice's first ablatum can display their abilities to the fullest. The distance restrictions they face are also smaller. According to past intelligence, if you want a humanoid weapon like Baze to operate at full power, 3 snake nests around him is the standard. If you want to add other ablatum knights, it would at least double the number. Speaking of which, it was a very correct choice for you to bring that rich second generation over. Boss Luo's format pyramid is also very powerful. Bamboo Pole was referring to Huang Bingzhen, who had fallen back into a coma. Luo Nan had added the format pyramid to Huang Bingzhen's body, suppressing the effects of the snake nests. Luo Nan received praise, but he didn't feel any joy. Shui Lei couldn't bear to watch the cruel scene of mental torture on the monitor screen. Luo Nan was the same. Plus, this sort of scene triggered the bad feeling he had before. It made him feel uncomfortable from the inside out. Red Fox ridiculed at this time, so the play has changed. It has changed to a world-shaking rescue? I say, is childishness contagious? One devilish brat is enough. Luo Nan felt bad. He had been inexplicably implicated. His heart was even more vexed. He took a deep breath and suppressed the pain in his finger. It turned out that he had unconsciously exerted strength in his hand. In the end, he broke the tip of the pencil and the sharp point pierced into his finger. At this time, Zhang Yingying spoke in the encrypted channel. Hey Fox. Enough of your squeaking. The Order of Justice wouldn't scare you to this extent. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. They were originally on the same side. Who would have thought that Zhang Yingying would go back on her word? And so would Bamboo Pole. Red Fox was already in a bad mood. Now that he was angry, he spoke without restraint. I'm sorry, but I really wasn't scared by the Order of Justice. I was scared by my pig-headed teammates. The Order of Justice does things without the slightest scruple. They are one of the big 3. If they can do something, they can handle it. No one can do anything to them. But the devilish brat is different. He doesn't even know the basics of choosing a battlefield. He wants to play with a big scene. What human-faced arachnid, Fairchild, words of Krite. His tempo is flying. You guys aren't afraid of getting your faces blown up when playing with explosives, but I'm afraid of getting shit blown up. Look at these innocent civilians. Didn't they get hit by the explosion? Zhang Yingying flew into a rage. Fox, don't go too far. Red Fox's words were far too incisive. Luo Nan really did forget to breathe for an instant. He just instinctively pulled out the tip of the pencil from his finger, letting it fall into the shallow water on the ground. His exquisite perception inexplicably locked onto the entire process of this tiny object's fall. This included its flip, its entry into the water, and the tiny ripples it created. Luo Nan used this method to distract his mind and enjoy a moment of tranquility. But by the time his attention returned, the boiling heat in his chest became more and more unbearable. He wanted to follow this burning emotion and argue loudly. He wanted to denounce Red Fox's stubborn and unreasonable attitude. But in the end he did not say a single word. He just lowered his eyebrows and retracted his eyes. He carefully limited the range of his mental senses to a range of 10 meters. Layer by layer he expanded outwards. 10 meters, 20 meters, 50 meters. Soon the range of his mental senses surpassed cat eyes. It continued to expand outwards. As the range of his mental senses rapidly expanded, the flow of information pouring in from the outside increased exponentially. The feedback of this information was not like the simple soul configuration, which could realize the convenient conversion of energy and information. The information had to follow the functional mechanism of the human nervous system and pass through specific neurotransmitters and various other forms of stimulation. The information had to be transmitted in an orderly manner, advancing layer by layer. Only then could the information finally fuse into the center of the brain and form a complete picture of all-encompassing perception. During this process, the structure of the human body would inevitably undergo an absolute test. In a few breaths of time, all sorts of detailed information about the environment of Area A of Frost River reality rushed toward Luo Nan like a rising tide. There was a loud rumble. Chapter 220. At this moment, it was as if Luonan had been struck by an enormous wave. His ears rang in an instant, his eyes were dazzled, and even his skin was a bit numb. However, his endurance was different from before. His mental plane was stable from beginning to end. As the subsequent impact of the flow of information ebbed, the stimuli of light, color, sound, and even hot, cold, and painful sensations were sorted out. The external scene gradually grew clearer and brighter. In the next few seconds, Luonan finally had the spare energy to take a deep breath. He divided a strand of his mind and compared it to the structural diagram of Frost River reality given by Bamboo Pole. He sorted out the location of his own sensing area. It was not easy to do this amidst the chaotic flow of information. In his daze he heard Shui Lei curse, "What kind of person is this?" And he also heard Red Fox's sneer in the encrypted channel. "I'm going too far? Secretary, you dare to pat your chest and say that you didn't have the intention to wipe your boss's face but in such a hilarious rescue mission?" Luonan did not raise his eyelids. He did not care whether or not Yuan would respond or not. He just focused on sorting out the sensing information according to his established train of thought. Red Fox's voice completely faded away when Luonan's mental plane was touched in many places. The corresponding information refreshed in succession. He immediately used the private chat function of the encrypted channel to send a message to Bamboo Pole, who was in charge of intelligence work. There was no immediate response. A full 5 seconds passed before Bamboo Pole replied with a sluggish emoticon. Luonan let out a long breath after doing this. He suddenly felt pain on his back. It was Xianxia slapping him on the back. She shouted, "Get your spirits up." Then she cursed back at Fox. "According to your logic, you're blabbering here to clean up the mess of the Order of Justice? So it turns out that the people they sent, the reserved area, and the guns were all forced by Luonan? These words sound quite familiar to me. Back then you ran out of Hu City like a stray dog. You seem to be wearing this hat. Back then you didn't even dare to fart. Now that you have the chance, why don't you seize the moment and throw this smelly thing at someone else?" At the support point, the Red Fox was infuriated after being exposed by Zhang Yingying. He had committed the most basic of mistakes. He immediately opened his mouth and roared into the channel, "It's easy for you to talk. Why are you playing with double standards? Do you want to King bet on what kind of faces those people from headquarters will have? Maybe we don't need to go too far. Let's watch the news tomorrow. What kind of attitude will Xia City's government and the military have? Bet that you'll run away again?" Zhang Yingying spat. "If you have the guts, go yell at headquarters and the government of Xia City. When the courageous are enraged, they draw their swords towards those stronger than them. When the cowardly are enraged, they draw their swords towards those weaker than them. Have you ever learned this in elementary school? If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. If not, I'll teach you for free." Probably feeling that the team's atmosphere was on the verge of collapse, Yuan finally opened her mouth, stopping Zhang Yingying from continuing. But now Zhang Yingying was also furious. If she didn't like it, she wanted to stab him back. "I'm sorry, we don't know each other that well. Don't call me that intimately. I don't want to say it a third time. Alright, Secretary, she asked you to pat your chest. Don't back down just because you don't have the capital to back down." The conversation between the two of them didn't need to be transmitted through the encrypted channel. This kind of face-to-face situation was much more direct than in the channel. For a moment, everyone raised their eyebrows. Under everyone's gazes, Yuan's face was devoid of joy or anger. She replied calmly, "I want to correct a mistake of yours. Mr. Luo isn't weak. The things he can do, are much, much more than what you're arguing with your mouths. Right now, the intelligence information has been adjusted. Please receive it carefully, everyone." Ha. Zhang Yingying and Red Fox used emotionless tones to respond to Yuan's forceful change of topic. The only thing they had in common was dissatisfaction. However, Yuan's words, "Mr. Luo," shifted the focus onto Luonan. So much so that Bamboo Pole coughed a few times in an attempt to rouse everyone's attention, but it was to no avail. He could only helplessly play the picture. "Fine. You guys should see for yourselves. I'll just mention one thing. The previous data is for reference only. From now on, all intelligence updates regarding the interior of Frost River reality will be based on the new picture." As he spoke, 2 moving pictures that looked almost identical simultaneously appeared in the encrypted channel. One was labeled old, and the other was labeled new. The 2 pictures were similarly concise and clear. The distribution of the red dots representing the enemy and the green dots representing the trapped citizens looked roughly similar. However, upon closer inspection, one would discover that the number of red and green dots in the old and new pictures did not match. The new picture had at least 10% more dots. This was the scale of over a dozen people. The vast majority of these 10% were red dots representing the enemy. "You've changed the monitoring method?" Cat Eyes spoke with her unique sharp voice. "These extra ones are all Ablatum Knights." Over at the support point, Bamboo Pole shot a glance at Red Fox, who still had a sneer on his face. He sighed, "Don't ask me. This has nothing to do with me." His words were unclear, but it was this vague response. "This chapter has yet to end. Please turn the page." This was tantamount to giving the others the clearest direction. After all, Yuan had long since mentioned the matter of the all-encompassing perception. She had also used the excuse of correcting mistakes just now. "You're joking." Red Fox wanted to maintain his cold and cynical attitude, but Bamboo Pole just spread his hands. Cat Eyes did not make a sound. She seemed to have sunk into deep thought. The sneer on Red Fox's face stiffened bit by bit. Then he seemed to have sobered up a bit. A twitching struggle appeared on his face. But before he could open his mouth again, Zhang Yingying let out an "aha" from over at Frost River Reality. She grinned and gave Luonan a heavy slap on the back. "Well done. A man of action triumphs over a cannon of words. A certain person's thousands of crooked words can't compare to doing a single thing in a down-to-earth manner. But you really are stealing Kitty's rice bowl, hey?" Zhang Yingying felt that she had spoken indiscreetly when she said these words. She hastily shut her mouth. Cat Eyes, who was by Luonan's side, woke up from her deep contemplation. She turned her head slightly and the radiance between the slits of her eyes was like a blade that had just been tempered with fire. It cut across Luonan's face. Even though Cat Eyes had long since regarded this fellow as a hidden boss, the ability that Luonan displayed in the domain she was most proficient in at this moment was an intense stimulation to her heart. All-encompassing suppression? This wasn't even the slightest bit funny. Cat Eyes stared fixedly at Luonan, attempting to see through Luonan's essence. But it was just like her previous experience of failure. She did not gain anything substantial. In the end, she could only resort to words. "Let's not talk about anything else. This place. Are you sure there's someone here? How did you do it?" Cat Eyes was pointing at a certain location on the periphery of Area A's arena plate. A certain red dot was marked extremely clearly on the new map, but there was no trace of it on the old map. This area was at the edge of Cat Eyes' long-range perception range. She should have been able to sense it, but in reality, she was unable to sense the existence of the other party. Red Fox suddenly had a point to vent his anger. He was unable to care too much. He chased after the end of Cat Eyes' words and spoke in a hoarse voice. "Kitty is right. Are you sure there's someone here? Can you guarantee that it's accurate and not just a random?" "You shut up. Did you spit out your brain from your cannon of words?" Cat Eyes and Zhang Yingying spoke at nearly the same time. The length of their words were different and their emotions were different. However, they made Red Fox choke on the spot. From Red Fox's perspective, at this very moment, be it Frost River Reality, the support point, or the virtual encrypted channel, all of them had sunk into a suffocating silence. Chapter 221. After venting her anger, Cat Eyes returned to silence. She seemed to be at a loss as to which side she should stand on. Luckily, Zhang Yingying stole the show once again at this time. She laughed and rubbed Luonan's back to soothe him. She even used her height advantage to pat his head and give him a good compliment. Luonan slapped her away in a bad mood. Zhang Yingying was not angry. On the contrary, she was very excited. She was the one who recommended Luonan into the society. Any of Luonan's achievements added luster to her face. At least she believed so. She didn't doubt the correctness of Luonan's answer. It had nothing to do with his ability. It just stemmed from her trust in this young and inexperienced high school student's personality. "Hey, let's get to the bottom of this. Tell me, why didn't Kitten see it but you did?" Luonan thought for a bit and finally spoke. "There's a corpse over there." Zhang Yingying was a little stunned. She wasn't the only one. There were very few people around who understood what was going on. Zhang Yingying tried her best to understand and tried to answer. "You are saying that the Ablatum Knight over there disguised himself as a corpse, so Bamboo Pole and Kitten escaped?" Luonan nodded. "This is too." Zhang Yingying was simply speechless. Though Luonan was able to see a corpse 50 meters away in such a complicated environment was already quite amazing, what kind of lousy reason was this? Could this be the legendary 1,000 gold formula of the jianghu? She had no intention of refuting Luonan, but she could not help but seek confirmation from Cat Eyes. Is this the case? Hello, Kitty? Cat Eyes only reacted when she heard the second voice. She forced herself to reply, there is indeed a corpse there. She was in low spirits and no longer doubted him. Through the encrypted channel, Bamboo Pole sent over a video feed of the surveillance system. Indeed, there was a corpse there. It was quite fat and it was a common overweight person in the city. It looked like it had been hit by a bullet. It was lying on the ground, motionless, and there was a large pool of blood under its body. Judging from the amount of blood loss, the chances of survival were slim. Anyone who saw the video couldn't help but be speechless. No matter how he looked at it, it was still a corpse. There were no signs that it was an ablatum knight in disguise. Ha! If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. In the encrypted channel, the Red Fox's hoarse and trembling laughter rang out. You say that this fatty is an ablatum knight? Excellent. Those who have seen the information on the Order of Justice, raise your hands. Which of the 9 ablatum knights of Xia City has such an appearance? For a moment, no one responded. The Red Fox's voice suddenly became louder. Or does Boss Luo believe that we should never let our guard down against any humanoid object? Then according to your logic, all the corpses in Frost River reality have the possibility of being ablatum knights. Who will verify this? Just based on those spots of light? What a joke. Towards the end, the Red Fox's throat was already torn. He had always believed that his words and actions were not wrong. Now he was even more certain of this. The reason why Luonan encountered such an awkward situation was ultimately due to the holy mothers surrounding the immature Luonan. There was no objectivity to speak of in their protective attitudes. More than once, he had the urge to turn around and leave this goddamn operation team so that he wouldn't be labeled as a coward. However, from Hu City to Xia City, he had accumulated many years of viciousness and depression. It was not so easy to vent it. With this anger, even if his head was broken and he bled, he would still argue this matter clearly. Bamboo Pole looked at Red Fox's expression and felt bad for him. He wanted to mediate the situation, so he reached out a hand and pressed down on Red Fox's shoulder. Fox, listen to me. Including you. Red Fox forcefully pushed Bamboo Pole's hand away. His bloodshot eyes glared fiercely at Bamboo Pole. Is your brain full of shit? You let a little kid say whatever he wants to say? You don't care about right or wrong at all. You just applaud a post-processing GIF? Bamboo Pole sighed again and spread his hands. Fox, you need to calm down and think. Cold my ass. Red Fox gave Bamboo Pole a thumbs up, pointing downwards. Then he took a deep breath and grabbed his lapels with both hands. He shook the red jacket that represented his honor and reputation. He grinned and laughed once more. How about this? If you guys aren't doing it, then I'll do it. We'll make this bet. We'll bet on the ablatum knight. Bamboo Pole was startled. He suddenly realized what Red Fox meant. He reached out to grab him, but as a non-combatant, how could he compare to Red Fox who had the reputation of being the city hunter? He reached out to grab empty air. Stop him, Bamboo Pole called out to Papercut. However, Papercut was also a mentally enhanced person. He wasn't any better than Bamboo Pole. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Red Fox's figure flashed a few times and he left the shopping center that served as the meeting point. He blended into the bustling street's surging stream of people. By the time Bamboo Pole and Papercut rushed out, their line of sight had already been blurred by the curtain of rain. How could they see Red Fox's shadow? Didn't you guys say that I only knew how to shoot my mouth off? I'll show you right now. Red Fox's lips curled into a cold smile. He walked toward the most chaotic area of the city center tonight with large strides. Red Fox, don't do meaningless things. You can't be reasonable, so you want to throw a tantrum? 2 messages consecutively appeared in the encrypted channel. The first was He Yuan's words and the second was naturally Zhang Yingying's. These 2 words were spoken at nearly the same time. Immediately, He Yuan's unprecedentedly stern gaze pierced over. Even with Zhang Yingying's usual lively temperament, she instantly choked. Just as Zhang Yingying was about to counterattack, Bai Xinyan moved closer to her ear and said, "Hey, you can't force people to extremes." Zhang Yingying opened her mouth but no sound came out. She had been reminded by Bai Xinyan. She discovered that Red Fox's state wasn't too normal. It was to the extent that he seemed to be smashing a broken jar. Was this necessary? At this moment, Red Fox's hoarse voice entered the encrypted channel. Then explain it clearly, Miss Secretary. Explain it clearly to me. What is the meaning? What is the meaning of this damned night? Red Fox continued to use the low-level error method to communicate. He simply didn't care about the strange gazes cast by the people around him. After he cursed loudly, he laughed at himself in a hoarse voice. Since there is no meaning, it doesn't matter what I do. As his voice fell, his footsteps sped up a bit. The support point was actually closer to Frost River reality than the Yulan Hotel. He secretly exerted strength in his legs. As he spoke, he saw the triangular flying ship surrounded by spotlights and police lights in the distance. In front of him was a stream of people retreating from Frost River reality. Their footsteps were either fast or slow. Their expressions alternated between fear, panic, excitement, and curiosity. Red Fox did not dodge or evade. He charged into the stream of people. His hands were in his pockets. He used the most relaxed method to advance against the flow of people. His arms and shoulders brushed against each other several times, but they did not affect him in the slightest. It was a very familiar feeling. These ignorant faces were no different from those in Hu City. Chapter 222. The cold smile on Red Fox's lips seemed to have been carved by a knife. This was also the curve he was used to. Layers upon layers of absurd déjà vu assaulted him, causing his memories to stir. It seemed as though a long time ago it was also a city like this, a night like this, a stream of people like this, and himself like this. However, there was no triangular spaceship in front of him. There was only a target that was desperately hiding his aura and fleeing in panic. I remember now. What a perfect operation. A group of friends and colleagues who were as outstanding as him had used 10 days and nights to lay out the plan. They had executed every step perfectly, and he, the urban hunter, had delivered the final blow. In the most bustling city area, not a single innocent citizen had been harmed. He had calmly killed the target, the so-called fanatic who had tortured and murdered women and children as sacrifices to the evil god in the name of preaching. Filthy blood had splashed onto his jacket, but it was like a wantonly spilling of champagne. At that moment, all the participants had cheered excitedly. Most of them were young people who had just passed the society's entrance assessment. There were very few awakened ones among them. However, they had used a strict plan and a high level of execution to grind down the target's capital layer by layer. They had created various favorable situations, and finally, they had perfectly killed the fanatic with B-rank strength. And then? What happened next? The church had unscrupulously wreaked havoc in Huqing. The list of participants had been leaked and they had singled out names to kill. In a few short days, more than half of the young people who had participated in the operation had died. What had the society done during this period of time? The headquarters had given them an evaluation and reprimand that they had acted without regard for the consequences. The branch had given them a safe haven ticket that was equivalent to an expulsion order. Their former comrades and good friends had gone on a closed-door training trip. Those who had luckily survived had run out of Huqing like dogs. They had hidden in the wilderness and scattered in all directions. Now that they had contacted him, there was a 90% chance that they would not respond. They did not know where they were and whether they were alive or dead. This was the F***king ending. The stream of people parted in front of Red Fox. Countless blurry faces that seemed familiar flowed past his shoulders. His mood had inexplicably entered a wondrous state of tranquility. He could even crack a joke. Distance to the target is 856 meters. Estimated time of arrival is 90 seconds. Everyone can raise the stakes. However, if anyone dares to touch my gambling equipment, I will fight them. The encrypted channel was silent. It was just like the night before he had fled Huqing. The corners of the Red Fox's lips twitched. In the end, these remaining memories were sealed in that cold and mocking smile. At this moment, Red Fox had already arrived at the outskirts of Frost River reality. There was still a large crowd of onlookers here. As the police cordon expanded outwards, they reluctantly retreated backwards. Among them were some media reports that were unable to occupy a good position. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. The personnel were trying to squeeze a path against the flow to get closer to the scene. As for the three surrounding buildings, the flashing lights were like twinkling stars. Occasionally they would synchronize and illuminate the entire area in a deathly white. It was a perfect graveyard. Just as the Red Fox was about to cut into the crowd, a new message slid into the encrypted channel. It was still from Yuan. Our attention shouldn't be on a corpse. The Red Fox was startled when he heard what was said. His brain spun a few rounds before he finally let out a laugh. I knew it, I knew it. To hell with Ablatum Knight, to hell with broken corpses. This is simply the biggest rubbish joke. Within Frost River reality, Zhang Yingying's eyes were wide open. She raised a finger and pointed at He Yuan. She wanted to berate her with a few words, but her gaze unconsciously turned to Luo Nan. Luo Nan's eyes were still drooping as he stood solemnly and silently. He did not have the calmness of having the pearl of wisdom in his hands, nor did he have the panic of having his scam seen through. Red Fox laughed in a low voice. Miss Secretary, are you saying that you want to fold up and admit defeat? Have you asked for the boss' opinion before saying these words? Mr. Luo, Boss Luo, won't you say a few words? It was as if Luo Nan did not hear anything. He did not respond at all. Zhang Yingying could not hold it in any longer, but Bai Xinyan hugged her neck. Her actions were intimate and she did not allow Zhang Yingying to say anything. Red Fox did not receive a response. His smile grew even wider, but his voice became even more hoarse. Good. Very good. Your ability to wipe your face and butt is truly amazing. Is there any meaning in doing this? Is it to forcefully slap my face? Or is it to let this scammer off the hook? He Yuan spoke calmly. Isn't this what you want? Red Fox was simply speechless. Are you trying to be funny? He Yuan sighed imperceptibly. This has nothing to do with being funny. I am just trying to bring your attention back to a more practical level. For example, your mistakes, your logical errors. You are unreasonable. At this moment, Red Fox simply had the urge to smash the hexier. But then, a familiar voice resounded in his ears. If we really do discuss this matter with the order of justice in the future, what will we be? The first wave of cannon fodder? Or will we be used as scapegoats? It's you who hasn't seen headquarters morality? The matter has already blown up. These secret orders are the best at dealing with matters of faith. They are making a mountain out of a molehill. Headquarters, on the other hand, is politically correct from start to finish. Red Fox finally realized that this was his voice. It was his original words, just slightly edited. The original meaning had not changed. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. He could only sneer at this. What? You want to report this to headquarters? Go ahead. I was harmed once in the past. I have experience. It doesn't matter if I do it a few more times. He Yuan still took out the edited version she had made at the last minute. The next part of the speech was even closer. It was also the beginning of Red Fox's falling out with everyone. What human-faced arachnid, Fairchild, words of Krite. The tempo is flying. You guys aren't afraid of getting your faces blown up when you play with him. I'm afraid of getting shit blown up. Look at these innocent citizens. Didn't they get blown up? The Red Fox was preparing for her next counterattack, but when these words suddenly entered her ears, her blood suddenly surged and her face flushed. As the sound waves shook her eardrums, the mocking and sharp tone was like a knife that pressed into the tip of her heart, grinding back and forth. He was in pain and annoyance. He opened his mouth wanting to speak, but his throat was inexplicably filled with the echoes of blown up, blown up. It was so solid that he could not spit out half a word. Only now did He Yuan's voice enter his ears. My code name is Secretary, but Luo Nan is not my boss. None of the people here have known him for more than 2 weeks. Luo Nan is a rookie who just entered the society. Whether it is in the mortal world or the inner world, his life experience can be said to be lacking. The chances of him making mistakes and stirring up trouble far surpass the rest of us, especially since he has the ability to make a big deal out of it. But me, Yingying Bamboo Pole? Many of us are leaning towards him, protecting him and helping him. Isn't this good? He isn't cannon fodder. He doesn't need to be a scapegoat. He doesn't need to be politically correct. Aren't you satisfied with this kind of result in this loose society? Aren't you looking forward to it? Especially after you came out from Hu City. Don't you King feed me chicken soup? The word Hu City was like a brand that was about to melt. It was forcefully stabbed into Red Fox's chest, making him unable to restrain himself from howling in pain. What kind of society is this? At best you're a death list. You list them one by one, then you cross them off one by one. Cross them off. You guys. Oh? Does the list you're talking about include me? The voice suddenly rang out behind his head, shocking him to the point that his scalp was about to explode. Even though Red Fox's emotions were at their most intense, his instincts still helped him turn his body and pull apart some distance. Only then did he turn his head. But he was stupefied on the spot in the next moment. A meager middle-aged man wore a well-ironed formal attire that would only appear at formal banquets. He wore a bow tie around his neck as he stood amidst the chaotic stream of people. The man smiled at Red Fox. The corners of his eyes, which were half covered by his retro glasses, rippled with light fine lines due to his smile. Chapter 223. Good evening, Fox. Good evening. Red Fox responded instinctively. In reality, he was sluggish for a full 5 seconds before he managed to regain his wits. He bowed again. President, you are here? The middle-aged man behind him was the president of the Wilderness Explorers Society's Xia City branch. He was the nominal leader of all ability users in the city, Ouyang. There was practically no one in Xia City who did not know of the president, who was known as the gentleman of the laboratory. If one wanted to find the president, one had to knock on the door of the laboratory on the 13th floor of the Shangding triplex building. Especially after the xianxia came out and the gradual perfection of the psychic wave network, Ouyang took on the roles of chief engineer, operating officer, and administrator. He spent all day adjusting the network, solving bugs, or carrying out service refinement and in-depth research. Many people suspected that their president Ouyang would not take a single step out of the building for 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The formal attire he wore had not changed for many years only because he appeared in public at a pitifully small number of formal meetings. It was because Red Fox knew of these things that he felt as if he had fallen into a dream when he saw Ouyang appear outside Frost River reality. His mind was in chaos. Also, what did the president's first words mean? Ouyang smiled as if he was just passing by. He waved his hand at Red Fox. You guys talk. I interrupted midway. Sorry for being rude. When Red Fox heard this, he immediately looked at the encrypted channel. However, there was no eye-catching administrator symbol. Ouyang was not in the encrypted channel. But looking at it from another perspective, the entire psychic wave network was set up by Ouyang. He had the authority to supervise all official actions coordinated by the society. It was normal for him to see their argument. Did he see everything that was said just now? Red Fox was a bit absent-minded, but he could feel that Ouyang arrival had miraculously lowered his burning emotions. All that was left was a slight warmth in the pit of his heart. Yuan's voice continued to come from the xianxia. I don't want to give you the impression that I'm expressing my emotions. I only wish to state the facts for you. Every metropolitan area in the world is nominally under the rule of the United Government. In reality, they are in a semi-independent state. The ecology of every city is different. The secular world is like this. The inner world is the same. There is no true unified order and logic. I don't like this situation. But it has resulted in this fact. Regardless of headquarters' conclusion, no matter what your results are in whose city, it is meaningless to transplant you to Xia City. Red Fox Heart. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. His mind was erratic and most of the words went in one ear and out the other. But he noticed something. From the moment Ouyang appeared until now, even if he did not enter the encrypted channel, his reaction was still very intense. However, there was no news from Frost River reality at all. There was no doubt, no surprise, no greeting, nothing at all. It seemed that Yuan and the others were completely unaware of Ouyang arrival. Or perhaps, this President Ouyang only existed in his own world. Could it really be an illusion? The Red Fox's consciousness became even more absent-minded. He could not help but turn his head to look at Ouyang. The president was so clear and honest. He even raised his hand to signal for him to listen carefully. Right at this moment, a few highly sensitive words pierced his eardrums from Yuan's side. I don't know what the death list is, but I believe that an awakened's core self-logic shouldn't be distorted by external threats. President Ouyang, who proposed the theory of 3 levels of logic, was right beside him. The Red Fox naturally knew the meaning of self-logic. That was what an ability user used to influence the outside world, to truly unleash their own power. Distortion? That was not a good word at all. First he was slapped in the face by his own words. Then he was frightened by Ouyang. The current Red Fox did not have the mood to be entangled. He just sneered and prepared to inform the other side of Ouyang arrival. Aren't the surrounding people stupid? Ouyang suddenly asked. Huh? The Red Fox heard this and subconsciously turned his head to look all around. He observed the bustling stream of people coming and going, but he did not know how to answer. Ouyang extended his right hand and gently swung his arm. It was as if he was tapping a beat. He drew a triangle in the air and suddenly changed the topic. The 3 first ablatums of the Order of Justice are standing in a triangle. The evolution field covers them and acts as a prelude to the curse. One of them is a secret-bound first ablatum and 2 clear-sworn first ablatums. Their strength is at most B+, C+, and C+. According to the evolution incantation theory, their actual range of control is a vast area with the center of the triangle as the center. The radius is 2 times the longest midline. Red Fox felt like an idiot. He could not keep up with Ouyang Chen's train of thought. If we convert the range, then this means that these 3 buildings, Frost River Reality, and the 2 neighboring blocks are all within the range of the curse. Everyone who is watching and those in the neighboring blocks are actually in danger of losing their lives. Yet they are still here. Aren't they stupid? Ouyang Chen was very serious. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. The smile on his face was no longer there. Behind the retro glasses, his eyes were calm and clear. This was the usual appearance of the gentleman of the laboratory. Red Fox was more familiar with this, but he was also more nervous. He hesitated for a moment before answering, because they are completely ignorant of the danger? More or less, but it's not enough. Ouyang Chen extended his hand and pointed outwards. It was as if he was stirring the surface of the water. His finger streaked across the surging stream of people. Fine ripples spread out. Red Fox's eyes suddenly widened. At this moment he finally discovered the strangeness of the surrounding crowd. No, it was the problem between him and Ouyang Chen. The 2 of them were clearly standing in the stream of people, but everyone was ignoring them. Even if everyone's attention was focused on the area around Frost River Reality, it was inevitable that they would bump into each other in the crowded stream of people. However, the current situation was that no one was making contact with the 2 of them. They passed by their sides, in the middle, and even passed through their bodies. The 2 of them seemed to have transformed into formless ghosts. Their bodies were in the real world, coexisting with the surrounding stream of people. Yet, there was an insurmountable distance between them. And on the other side of the encrypted channel, Red Fox clearly saw that the timer in the corner of the interface had actually stopped. This is true projection, spatial fault, whatever you want to call it. However, I'm more used to calling it the logic world. Ouyang Chen extended his hand and pointed at his temple. He added, "It's a world that I interpret using my logic." Was this the power of an extraordinary? In the face of such an inconceivable method, Red Fox completely lost the courage to think. He could only bow his head and admit defeat. "President, please give us a clear explanation." Ouyang Chen did not feel offended. Just like he did in the society's high-level training class, he used the usual terminology to explain, "It's because they know nothing about our logic and the logic of the inner world. The range of thought of ordinary people mostly stops at the limits of their field of vision. Therefore they cannot see the danger. There are also some people who consider the range of a firearm, the range of an explosion, and other concepts. However, this is not enough. If they truly want to avoid trouble, they need to cross at least 2 street blocks. This is a danger that they cannot imagine." Ouyang Chen's explanation was undoubtedly the truth. Red Fox nodded. Who knew that Ouyang Chen would change the topic? "It's not just them. Even you don't understand. In a sense, you are as stupid as them. No, you are even more stupid." What? Chapter 224. Red Fox was like a poor student who had been questioned by a teacher. He was tongue-tied and did not know what to do. Ouyang Chen entered a strict teacher state. The cold and clear gaze behind the lenses caused Red Fox's taut nerves to tremble. At this time the second question was raised. What is the logic of the inner world? Red Fox opened his mouth but did not say anything. Actually, he had already spoken the thoughts in his mind when he was reprimanding Luonan. What difference could there be? It was all about politics, reality, compromise. But it was quite difficult to say these words in front of Ouyang Chen. Ouyang Chen did not expect Red Fox to respond. He simply gave his answer. The logic of the inner world is determined by destructive power. The destructive power range of extraordinary power determines the boundaries of the inner world's logic. Red Fox was dumbfounded, but he had no way to refute. Compared to ordinary people, the number of ability users is very small. But our destructive power is very strong. We form associations, orders, and organizations. We project our organizations to various parts of the world, allowing our destructive power to cover the entire world. As long as we want to, we can directly affect the life and death of every person. Secular society has been warped by us in this way. In the end, this is a kind of bandit logic. President. Red Fox became a patient with a communication disorder. He did not know how to express his opinion at all. Ouyang Chen curled his lips. Let's change it to a nicer sounding term. We can call it the logic of the strong. This is because the most powerful destructive power is built upon the foundation of the self-logic of the strong. The reality of the situation is that there is no strong destructive power that can cover the entire world. In the end, there is a limit. Therefore, the inner world revolves around the strong, forming radiation circles of all sizes. The normal mode of interaction in the inner world is born from the collisions, compromises, and exchanges between the circles of the strong. In the logic of the inner world, the strong are the foundation. Other conflicts, compromises, and politics are just expressions. Then the question is, what is strong? Red Fox's brain finally began to spin when faced with the third question. At this time, Ouyang Chen pointed to the top floors of the 3 buildings. 3 first ablatums working together can completely collapse a skyscraper regardless of the cost. Are they strong? Red Fox answered cautiously. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. That depends on who you compare yourself to. Excellent. Ha! The Red Fox still remembered that this was the first time Ouyang Chen had acknowledged him since they met. However, what did the president acknowledge? Ouyang Chen adjusted the frame of his glasses, but his gaze was unprecedentedly cold. You finally know that strength is determined by comparison. I can add a few more sentences. Strength is achieved through resistance through real achievements. So where is your resistance? The Red Fox's heart twitched fiercely. He was stunned on the spot. Against whom? The scattered memories gathered together like a cluster of clouds. Red Fox vaguely remembered the time when he first came to Xia City. Now that he thought about it, it was really strange. After suffering such a painful lesson, why would he continue to reside in this damned association? Yes, it was because of the association's resources and benefits. It was because he needed to train hard and improve quickly so that he could return to Hu City and settle his grudges. But day after day, year after year, how could he forget? When and for what reason did he forget? He seemed to have forgotten as well. Was it because his talent was limited and he could not make any progress? Was it because of the passage of time and the healing of the heartache? No. In the final analysis, it was just as Yuan said. His self-logic had been distorted by the logic he hated the most in the past. Wasn't the word collapsed the most habitual tone of that bunch of trash from headquarters? Distorted. Red Fox extended his hands. He looked at the structure of his body, which had slowly changed over the years, but he felt that it was very unfamiliar. Ouyang Chen's voice entered his ears. Don't get distracted. Let's continue to discuss strength. Oh, I mean to discuss why you are stupid. The turmoil in Red Fox's mind was interrupted. His melancholy lessened slightly, but his thoughts became even more chaotic. He raised his head in a daze and looked at the president who had just given him a severe warning. Resistance or comparison is fine. We need to give an example. Tell me, who is the strongest here? Of course it's you, President. Red Fox did not know whether to laugh or cry, but he answered without the slightest hesitation. Ouyang Chen was currently the only officially registered extraordinary in the Xia City branch. He was a super powerful being who stood at the top of the pyramid of humanity. Even though the Order of Justice's secret-bound first ablatum, xuanhuan, was a powerful being who could make people pale at the mention of his name, he was far from being mentioned in the same breath as Ouyang Chen. Please turn the page if this chapter is not finished. If Ouyang Chen completely disregarded the various restraints between extraordinaries and hardened his heart to make a move, the 3 first ablatums of the secular side would either have to risk their lives to summon their holy relic or they would immediately kneel and beg Fairchild to switch sides and help them. Aside from these 2 options, there was no third way to resist. Ouyang Chen did not hold back. He nodded in approval. And then, just talk about our side. The secretary, right? Red Fox's response was relatively quick. Ouyang Chen declined to comment. And then? Red Fox slowly pondered and answered, and then me, Yinyin, kitten, papercut, bamboo pole? I'm not familiar with Bai Xinyan. Ouyang Chen laughed. He did not make any movements, but a detailed perspective map of a building appeared in front of the 2. It was none other than Frost River reality. Several figures were projected inside. They were Yuan and the other members of the society. Although they were small in size, they were vivid and lifelike. What about him? Ouyang Chen pointed at the child that Red Fox had intentionally or unintentionally skipped over, Luonan. Red Fox sneered. Him? He's not even an awakened. Yeah, he's still not an awakened. Ouyang Qin nodded, but then he sighed. He recited in a low voice, the common people are bright, I alone am muddled. The common people examine, I alone am muddled. Red Fox's attainments in ancient texts were shallow. He was dizzy from listening to Ouyang Qin. He could only raise his hands and surrender. President? Ouyang Qin did not intend to make things difficult for Red Fox. He laughed and said, I'm not a specialist in reading scriptures. From my personal understanding, the meaning of these words is, everyone's energy is limited. When a person establishes a higher level of logic, it will be hard for him to divert his attention to deal with the chaotic logic of the common people. And when he forms a higher level of logic, the logic of the common people will be meaningless to him. Therefore, the intelligent people of the common people will always be able to see his muddle-headedness and childishness. The further the logic of the common people is from the logic of the higher level, the more intense the contrast becomes. After reaching a certain level, they will no longer be able to communicate. They will run in opposite directions. This is why it is said, the path of understanding is like obscurity. The path of advancing is like retreating. The path of barbarians is like the path of barbarians. Ouyang Qin gazed at the small and exquisite projection. His gaze was deep and distant. A higher level and even stronger confrontation. If we use the image of the common people to see and evaluate his actions, how would we know the hardships within? Besides, he is still a novice. Everything must be accumulated from the beginning. Chapter 225. A group of people looked at each other in dismay at the junction between the private room area and the public arena of Frost River Reality Area A. Yuan stopped talking. Earlier, Red Fox had entered a strange state of silence. He did not respond no matter what. The excitement from before was like a bonfire that had been extinguished, turning into ashes. She can give orders, but I think her ability to communicate with others is average. Zhang Yingying whispered into Bai Xinyan's ear. It was easy for her to talk while standing. Bai Xinyan tightened her grip on Zhang Yingying's neck once more to shut her up. Yuan was as quiet as ever. She just lowered her eyes as if she was muttering to herself. On the street, Bamboo Pole walked quickly toward Frost River Reality. At the same time, he used the surrounding surveillance cameras to circle around a few times before finally capturing Red Fox's image. The angle of the image was not very good, but he could still see Red Fox's eye-catching red jacket. He stood like a stake in the stream of people. He was quietly lost in thought. No one knew what he was thinking. Bamboo Pole let out a long breath. It's good that he didn't just charge in. Those words were effective. Papercut swayed his slightly plump body with great effort to keep up with Bamboo Pole's footsteps. He tried to come up with an idea. Can we take the lead and verify it? The conversation between the two of them had intentionally avoided the encrypted channel so as to not agitate the Red Fox. Bamboo Pole shook his head without even thinking. It's too dangerous. According to Luonan's updated dynamic map, the one closest to He Yuan and the others was the corpse marked as an Ablatum Knight. However, the distance between each Ablatum Knight was not large. Right now, the situation in Frost River Reality Area A was like a strange chess game. The luxury private room area and the public arena were the boundaries of the river, separating the society from the order of justice. The society had deployed their chariots and cannons. Before they could do anything, the old generals were already fighting with their own Xianxia. However, the rest of the chess pieces were ready, and their formation was strict. Normally, these chariots and cannons were prepared to devour their own old generals. However, if the society really wanted to cross the river, then the corresponding pressure would naturally be borne by the society. Papercut spread his hands after listening to Bamboo Pole's explanation. Something will happen if we verify it. Something will happen if we don't verify it. Isn't this tormenting us? That boss Luo should at least say something clearly. Papercut did not take a stand on either side of the argument, but Red Fox's intense and resolute reaction stirred up some sympathy in him. At the same time, Luonan's long silence made him a bit dissatisfied. Even if he was a teenager, since he had stepped into the circle and participated in the operation, he had to show enough professionalism and teamwork. Especially in such a critical moment, a cheater could kill the entire team with a single thought. As a team member who wouldn't be afraid. In the end, the Red Fox was just overreacting. Papercut shot another glance at the encrypted channel. Then, as expected, he saw a young and childish face. For some unknown reason, Cat Eyes, who was sharing her view, had fixed her gaze on Luonan's face for quite some time. This seemingly immature high school student had entered a state of silence since the beginning of the debate. Be it sarcastic remarks or supportive actions, none of them could move him. Upon closer inspection, Luonan should still be using his all-encompassing senses. His eyes were vacant and his thoughts were misty. His attention wasn't placed on the matter of Red Fox. If one were to put it in a good way, it would be due diligence and indifference. But if one were to put it in a bad way, it would be too arrogant, selfish, and cold-blooded. Kids these days. Papercut's view leaned toward the latter, but he was calmer than Red Fox. In the end, he just sent a private message to Cat Eyes. "Hey kitty, do you see anything?" Cat Eyes did not respond immediately. Her view did not change at all. Was she entranced? Papercut was helpless. He could only send another message. Is there a way to verify it without provoking the order? It was in the instant he sent the message that he inexplicably recalled the conclusion of a famous lecturer in the Society's team coordination class. When the public channel of a team is idle, private messages are prevalent. When that happens, the collapse of the team is just a few feet away. Papercut grinned. He looked at Luonan's image in the encrypted channel and felt even worse. At this time, Cat Eye's view swayed. It seemed that someone was calling out to her. "Kitty, what do you say?" Inside Frost River reality, Xianxia could no longer hold back. She forcefully pried open by Xinyan's chokehold arm and called out to Cat Eyes. Papercut was not the only one who felt the terrible atmosphere of the team. Xianxia had firmly stood by Luonan's side before, but she was very clear in her mind. As the focal point of the conflict, this kid's taciturn way of doing things was extremely inappropriate. Acting deep and reserved was no longer popular. Everyone liked warm guys. However, this brother Luonan really could not be woken up. By Xinyan, from the perspective of a doctor, advised her not to disturb Luonan while he was in the middle of sensing. This was to avoid a situation from happening. As for Heiyuan, Luonan's impression of her as a swift and decisive secretary was inexplicably deep and reserved tonight. She spoke haltingly and her goal was unclear. Her performance was completely different from last week when they were dealing with the human-faced arachnid. It seemed that Heiyuan had yet to truly clarify the so-called mission up until now. This made Red Fox so angry that his brain juice was about to burst out. Helpless, Xianxia could only consult Cat Eyes, who was the most professional on core issues. If Cat Eyes could understand Luonan's intentions, help explain a few words or provide a proof, then there would be a possibility of loosening this tight knot. Cat Eyes did not respond immediately after the call was sent out. Instead, 2 seconds passed before she suddenly turned her head. It was as if she had been startled awake. This gave Xianxia a fright. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." Cat Eyes extended her hand and straightened the flat-brimmed hat she wore crookedly. The shadow hanging down from the brim of the hat blocked half of her face. "What are you talking about?" Xianxia looked at her suspiciously before saying, "I'm talking about the matter of verification. Red Fox is unforgiving and Luonan, this fellow, just can't get a fart out of it. Do you have a way to verify? Something a bit more reliable?" On the other side, Papercut nodded to himself. He was thinking the same thing as Xianxia. But then he saw that Cat Eyes did not respond. Instead, her line of sight shifted back to Luonan's face. She moved away slightly before returning back. It was as if that delicate and pretty young face possessed some sort of terrifying magnetism. This was the rhythm of being mesmerized. Papercut could not help but ridicule in his mind. It was also at this time that Cat Eyes' line of sight suddenly congealed. It was highly focused, so much so that the interface of her entire field of vision became blurry. The only thing that was clear was the pair of pupils that slowly rose up in the center of the interface. They still carried a bit of mottled colors. The pupils belonged to Luonan. This contradictory character seemed to have finally heard the various doubts and dissatisfactions of the people. He temporarily walked out from his self-enclosed logic to connect with the outside world. The target of Luonan's gaze was Cat Eyes, but Papercut was paying attention to Cat Eyes' shared perspective. It was the same as looking through Cat Eyes' eyes and locking gazes with Luonan. Okay, the word locking gazes was not accurate. It should be a one-sided observation. But inexplicably, when Papercut's gaze locked with Luonan's pupils that could not be considered clear, a cold shiver suddenly ran through his body. At this moment, even the drizzle falling from the sky had an additional chill to it. It seeped down to the bones. Bamboo Pole's whisper faintly entered Papercut's ears. "This eye is sinister. That you're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.